I won't get too much into it, but we'll start with you, Andrew, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Wilson. I'm the host of The Crucible. It is, to my knowledge, the fastest growing debate channel anywhere on YouTube. I'm a political satirist, a political pundit, and a blood sport debater.
Right on. We also have Richard Spencer.
Yes, I'm Richard Spencer, and you can find me on X or Twitter, and you can look up Alexandria on Substack. You might have heard about me from the alt-right days, the bad old times. Fun old times for some, but still going.
How would you describe yourself? I mean, for a lot of people, it's been a while. You were in the spotlight quite a bit back in the early Trump era.
Yes. Well, it was incredible. And I think there was also a sort of woke liberal webzine bubble that was obsessed with the alt-right and was expanding it beyond all proportion. But yeah, I would wake up and there would be 5 new articles on me. It was, it feeds the ego. It was incredible. It was, but also kind of terrible in some ways. I mean, you kind of, you lose yourself, and I'm glad about where I am now.
How would you describe yourself then for people who don't know you?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, in the alt-right days, I thought that Trump was going to shake things up, that all of these tired, boring, dusty conservatives were going to be shoved aside because they opposed him pretty vehemently at the beginning, and he was just going to crush them all. And there was going to be a new blood entered into the system, and that we were going to start talking about things we weren't talking about. I had those dreams, and those dreams kind of crashed down to reality. And I recognized that where I was before that was where I was going to be later, which is being alternative, being independent, focusing on intellectual matters, et cetera. That's a better place for me.
So we'll obviously dive a lot more into both of your backgrounds as the conversation continues. But we have Phil Labonte hanging out.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and counter-revolutionary.
Right on. So shall we get started with the first question, which I'm not sure I completely understood, is that you said Joe Biden may be a conservative, or you said he is a conservative?
He's a conservative. There's no question. So
I love it.
All right. Well, look, what is a conservative? A conservative conserves. That's in the very name. He maintains a status quo.
Wait. So then what is a progressive?
I think liberal is actually the better word.
Yeah, but what's a progressive?
Well, I don't know. Hillary Clinton, someone who keeps moving.
So what do progressives do?
They are moving in some new type of direction that a conservative is fighting against.
Yeah, right. Okay, got it. So how is Biden not? If you just say that conservative describes everybody who is conserving any kind of status quo, even if it's a progressive status quo, that's bizarre.
I'm conserving lasagna from last night.
That's right.
I'll go on this.
All right.
I don't know if you've heard this or not, but Joe Biden is a very old man, and he worked with segregationists back in the day. He still talks about it. He took Republican stances on things all throughout his career. He is a sort of right-wing pro-credit card company, pro-finance, pro-neocon or neocon ally person. That's who he is. He's not this left-wing maniac attempting to bring communism to the world. It's very hard to...
The guy has open border policies, man. What?
He doesn't have an open border policy. He's actually put forward a immigration policy that was pretty draconian. Now,
like amnesty?
Hold on.
Pretty draconian, that amnesty.
Trump is also putting forward a sort of amnesty, but
no, he's not putting forward amnesty.
Let's get the conservative argument succinctly so that we can
then you can react to it without taking me off the. You're knocking me around. Get balance.
Good for you.
Yeah. So he is a old man who is promising a sort of return to normalcy. That was his promise in 2020. That is why he won, in fact, because Trump, it's his fault in some ways. It's not his fault in others. He is associated with chaos, with insanity. He's associated with conspiracy theories, with QAnon, with J6, et cetera, et cetera. And he promised normalcy. Now, I think normalcy is impossible in in our current nation. I don't think he's going to bring us all together and we're going to all just resolve our differences and find that we all agree. But in order to step towards that, he is someone who is going to discipline his base. He disciplines his base in ways that I don't agree with, in fact. I am highly critical of the bombardment and the death and destruction in Gaza right now. So is his base. I agree with Antifa on this one, as crazy as that might sound. He's going to discipline them, and he is going to maintain a kind of more reasonable, a little bit critical here, we might withhold weapons here, policy on Israel and Gaza. He's going to discipline his base. In terms of wokeness and all that kind of stuff, I know it's been very profitable for people to talk about wokeness all the time, but my sense is that it peaked and is on the decline. If we define wokeness as like all kids should be trans and like, replace the 4th of July with Vladimir Lenin Day or just kind of silliness, novelty in terms of sexual manifestations and all that kind of stuff. I actually think that is on the decline. I think Hollywood is going to shock a lot of conservatives when they start going conservative with, white Little Mermaids this time and traditional storytelling for the simple reason that they want to make money.
So
hold on. Wokeness is declining. He is maintaining the system. In terms of Make America Great Again, all of that garbled talking points that Trump put forward, Biden has attempted to enact in a imperfect way. The CHIP Act, that was something that Trump actually talked about. That's something that Biden went through with. But let's infrastructure. Well, I'll finish up really quick. Infrastructure. He is again attempted to build back infrastructure. I could go on. Draconian immigration policy. He at least puts forward his part. He was in support of a draconian immigration initiative. He is a conservative in the sense that he looks back to the 60s, the 80s, whatever, as some kind of good time. Let's go back to it. Let's maintain it. Let's discipline the far left and move forward. Is he going to win with that? Is that possible? Those are interesting questions.
So no, those aren't that interesting, those questions. Let's start with all of the
okay. Well, all right.
Let's start with all of these kind of insane ideas. Start with insane idea number 1. Wokeness is dead. No, it's not dead.
Well, he did say declining.
Yeah. I don't even think it's declining.
I'm more inclined to believe that it's actually seeing some pushback, but there's
pushback, sure, but no, I'm sorry. Sorry to be the hang on, Richard, hang on.
There's pushback from the New York Times.
I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
I want to give,
but Disney's not going to stop the wokeness, and Hollywood's not going to start making conservative movies. That's an insane take. I don't know where you came up with that. It's madness. Moving over to the Trump-Biden administration itself, Biden's in no way a conservative. I don't know where you got that idea. He's conserving the status quo. That's meaningless. That's not what conservatism is. Conservatism is the conservation of Christian ethics and Christian values in the United States. That's conservatism. Okay. Biden's not doing that. There's no how, no way. He's not doing it. When you look at the southern border, yes, it's wide open. He's putting these immigrants up in hotel rooms. He wants amnesty. He's pushing all of that forward. In almost every way that I can conceivably think, this guy's moving a progressive policy, not a conservative policy. There's no conservation at all.
I actually think I agree with Richard that wokeness is declining. I think we are winning this. If you look at Target, there was a really, really funny meme in the Vosh, and I know you love the guy, subreddit, where
leave Ian alone.
They were his fans are actually scared. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of big corporations have pulled back the Pride merchandise in June. Mm-hmm. The Bud Light backlash has mattered. I just to make that point.
Yeah, but here's the thing: the empire will strike back.
Yeah,
and this kind of absurd idea that Christian conservatives remembered that we could boycott, that we had the most powerful institution on planet Earth, the church. That's the one powerful institution that conservatives have always had, and we barely ever use it. Once. We were like, well, no, on the Dylan Mulvaney thing, and it kind of caught a little bit of steam. But no, there's going to be massive backlash. No, the trans agenda is not going away. The thing that comes after it, that's even worse than that, I don't know what that's going to be, but it's going to be worse. and it's coming.
Transhumanism.
Worse than that. I mean, transgenderism is kind of transhumanism.
It is, yes.
Let me put it this way. Okay, so I guess we might have a definitional issue. I would define a conservative as conserving the status quo, whether that's a party or a class or a way of life. Now, it might very well be conserving in some instances Christian values of the church or someone.
Yeah, it has to conserve foundational ethics.
Okay, but I'm using that word objectively. I think Brezhnev, a leader of the Soviet Union, was a conservative. He maintained the Soviet Union, and he actually reduced some of the insanity of it. So that's my definition. So we shouldn't get caught up on those. But
hang on. No, we need to get caught up a little bit on the definition. So.
Go ahead.
When you're talking politically about what we're considering a conservative politically, we're thinking about a throwback ideology. We're not thinking about anything which is a progress ideology in any way. So we want stronger borders. We want to go back to what stronger borders look like. We want to go back to when we had good, tough institutional power. We want to go back to this type of thing. But the underpinnings is always the Christian ethic. So the big fight inside of the right wing is Christian ethics versus everything else. That's why you have Christian populism, Christian nationalism. That's what it is. That's what conservatism is. That's what's going to stay.
So this is an interesting point. Richard, your definition of conservatism is typically the liberal definition of conservatism. I'm not saying only liberals, but this is why the media, the corporate press, the liberal outlets say Tim Pool is a conservative, despite the fact that I'm not a Christian and I hold many liberal views. And then you have the more right view of conservatism, which is Christian values, which is why conservatives or people who are Christian will say Tim Pool is definitely not a conservative, and the left will say Tim Pool is definitely
right. I have a sort of relative.
Tim Pool is definitely not a conservative.
I have a sort of, and I'm not a conservative either, I guess. Yeah, I mean, but I have a relative.
Richard Spencer is definitely not a conservative.
Thank you for saying that. All right, I have a relativistic, objective notion of a conservative. If you are maintaining something that is going in some sort of direction, you are conservative. Now, let me get at liberalism a little bit, and I'll bring in the trans issue and so on, because I think we need a narrative to fully understand this. So progress towards what, right? That's the issue. I'm a progressive. Well, what does that mean exactly? I think it does mean something. I think liberalism is, if you go back to the word itself, it is liber. Liberalism is a notion of Dionysian release and expression. Liberalism is very well codified in Euripides the Bacchae, in which he describes a situation in which Dionysus comes into town, into Thebes, demands to be recognized as the son of God, which has some interesting resonances for you, I would imagine. And
what is this sophistry gibberish? What's the point? What's the point?
I'll get to the point. All right.
Just
let me. Okay?
I don't want to hear about Dionysus.
Dionysus comes into town and he brings about a massive orgy that will ultimately lead to the beheading and death of the Pentheus, who's actually leading Thebes. So liberalism, you might agree with me here. Liberalism, it isn't like rational or about policy. It's fundamentally about release. Even democracy itself is a kind of orgy, you could say, in the sense that it is about all people participating, taking part, the majority winning. That's what liberalism is.
When we're talking about these words, though, you and I can agree that when you're discussing a word, how it's used in the commons versus what its kind of academic or underpinning meanings aren't really that relevant.
So we're talking about I reframe things and create a new word.
So when we're talking about this in the commons, nobody's talking about Dionysus and orgies.
Well, I thought only the leftists thought about meanings all day long and never talked about anything with substance. I mean, are we leftists here? I mean,
well, I'm going to jump right in the middle and say, when you're going into Dionysus and stuff, I'm like, come on, what's the point? But it actually is very interesting that liber in ancient Rome, it is the root word of where liberal and these words come from.
Exactly.
That is interesting.
Drunkenness, freedom, liberation. So this is the thing. So that's what liberalism is always about. It's always about releasing
it's about degeneracy.
To take part in
it's about degeneracy.
You could say that, yes, and I agree. And it is coming from the wine god as well. But this is the thing. Liberalism had a narrative, a meta-narrative for much of the 20th century. While I was flying down here, I actually watched, I don't even know why, but I watched 42 which is a movie about Jackie Robinson, right? And it was unbelievably sentimental, over the top, too much. It was a terrible movie, if kind of well shot. That Jackie Robinson notion of a poor guy who tries hard, who's tough but moral, and he finally gets a chance to be part of white society, and everyone rejects him, and then they accept him, and we're all good, and the white guy can, embrace the black guy in the ball field, and we're all Americans now, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That is a master narrative for liberalism. That justifies them morally, because liberals are kind of moralistic. They want to feel like they're on the right side of history. And that is played out over and over, certainly with blacks. There's a bit of a different narrative in terms of the Holocaust and the Jewish experience, et cetera. Definitely played out with gays. They were oppressed. They were getting their ass kicked by the police. Now they're here, and now they're Americans, and now they're getting married. So they're bourgeois Americans, no less. And it played out again with transgender. What I am saying is, I think Phil was saying, like, what's after transgenderism or whatever.
No. He was asking.
Okay. Well, someone said that. I'm not sure there is anything after transgenderism.
After.
Well, hold on. I'm not sure there is anything after, because you are scraping the bottom of the barrel with like 0.5% of the society who wants to dress up and so on.
It's less than that. And I describe it as they're scraping it so hard, wood chips are coming up.
Absolutely. And so this meta-narrative of Americanism and inclusion, et cetera, is reaching its limit. No one can plausibly say that, like, blacks are like really oppressed in this country when they benefit from affirmative action, when they benefit from like moralization in Hollywood, et cetera.
Well, I don't want to get too far off the Biden is a conservative. Trump.
So Biden's an expression of this, because he's like 100, or he's 80 in fact, but he's like 20th century liberalism has reached its endpoint, and you have this like doddering old man kind of like in a wheelchair trying to keep it going. That's where we are.
So
that's like the biggest word salad bunch of gibberish garbage. Okay, so to keep it concise, right? Without going off on Dionysus and all of this other garbage. What actually, just very concisely, makes Biden a conservative? Concisely.
He is taking on a Cold War posture vis-a-vis Russia. Mm-hmm. He wants to build microchips in the United States with the CHIP Act. Mm-hmm. He's a bit incoherent, but he kind of gestures towards, we've got a problem at the border that we've got to solve. We need to build back infrastructure, and we're all Americans, hot dogs and baseball and parades.
The simple one sentence is, he is trying to maintain some kind of status quo.
Correct.
Okay, got it. And
Trump is threatening it.
Yeah, I mean, but that's good. How is Trump threatening the status quo? He's threatening the progressive status quo. So Trump, one of the big things with him is he's a hand grenade. Yeah. His job was to be thrown in, shake things up, expose the swamp, do those types of things. Nobody had expectations that Trump was going to be a great reformer. That wasn't his job. His job was revenge. He was revenge of the American public. That's exactly what we put him in there to do, and that's exactly what he was doing. That's why he has such a great base, is because we wanted things shaken up as much as we possibly could. The return.
Isn't that a bit nihilistic?
No, it's not nihilistic.
Well,
that's what Michael Moore was the one who progressive Michael Moore.
He nailed it.
Is the one who explained this. He said Donald Trump is a hand grenade, and the working class
human Molotov cocktail.
The working class is throwing him in because they're so pissed off and they're so jarred by this progressive garbage.
Functionally,
Donald Trump is true, he's a little bit towards LGBTQ, but it seems like it's posturing. It seems like it's posturing towards it rather than anything really too substantive. Whereas Biden's filling his administration with these people. Under the Biden administration, we had gay sex going on in these Capitol buildings, and they're just like, don't care.
I got to pause you there, and I'm not sure that's a new thing.
I mean, maybe
there's less gay sex in the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. Sorry, I won't say more.
Yeah. No, I don't believe that either.
Not voters. Operatives.
Yeah. So that's a kind of typified progressive talking point too, right? That so many of the Republicans are just actual undercover gays. It's like, No, I don't think so. And on top of that, I would
not
say,
the voters, but absolutely the staffers. But
not even the staff. The Democrats are still worse.
It's kind
on
of
this,
a joke
Spencer.
too, but let's not get caught up on that. I think it was about a year ago during our last Gay Pride, month-long celebration, when he invited some transgendered women to the White House lawn, and they were, partying around. Right. But this is my point. This is an encapsulation of my point. So she took off her shirt and flaunted her breast, and that was just a little bit too far, because what Biden is trying to do, and I think it's kind of ultimately impossible, what he is trying to do is to integrate these forces into American institutions in order to manage them. And if you cross that line, if she had just partied around and whatever, that's okay. You get naked, you're starting to offend the American public.
Wouldn't that be
when
progress?
You get disciplined.
Wouldn't that be progress? If you're integrating all of these external degenerate factors in so that you can manage them better inside of that would be definitionally what I would think a progressive would do, not a conservative. So even by your logic, you say this is a conservation of the status quo. Then you give us an example of how he's breaking the status quo.
He disciplined them for going too far is my fundamental
Yeah, but you
point.
also claim that they're integrating this. So if they're integrating it, that would be progress, not conservatism.
I really just don't like when people choose these words that give them these benefits, like progress. It's degress or regress.
Yeah.
I
can only go off of his definition, right?
I get it. I'm not saying either of you are right or wrong. I'm saying one function of leftist political strategy is to use words that will always make them sound good, like progress, like we are advancing.
Right.
I personally, in my opinion, I don't see this as an advancement. I see it as a degradation.
Yeah, I would. Oh, I would too. But I'm just saying, if the idea that Biden is a conservative because he's kind of maintaining this status quo of what's going on, and then immediately we get an example of how, well, no, he's kind of moving the goal past the status quo, integrating the degenerates in, making it a little bit more controllable for them to then use this group to push an even more progressive that seems the opposite of what you're...
Because the status quo of America is liberalism and progressivism. The status quo of America is not some like deep monarchy and Catholic country or Orthodox countries you want.
That's paradoxical.
It is totally paradoxical.
What you've now said is that
America is paradoxical.
Joe Biden is a conservative because he's conserving progressive.
He's conserving progressive values. Yeah, it's a total paradox.
But I define liberalism for you. America is America is a unique country. America, by my definition, has never really been a nation state in the sense that, say, Finland is a nation. It's actually similar to Russia in the sense that it's always been an empire. It's been an open space, a frontier to explore and conquer and transform. It has been a global empire even before the Second World War. Woodrow Wilson imagined a hegemonic American Europe with nation states underneath it and a League of Nations organizing them. It has been that. It has never been a nation state in the way that even Germany right now is a nation state. It's a paradoxical place. We don't have this like past of a monarchy or the Catholic Church or something like that to react to. It is fundamentally different and fundamentally paradoxical.
I don't disagree that it's founded on Enlightenment principles and that there's going to be some form of maybe what you would consider progressivism. Okay, there's no way though that the people who formed this republic ever envisioned anything like this. Nothing even close to anything like this. That was not within the envisionment of these types of progressive values. But when Tim rightly points this out, it's paradoxical to say the conservation of the status quo is progressivism, right? If that's the case, then basically you're flipping the parties. You're saying that all liberals are conservatives, and then what's a conservative?
Someone changing the system.
Yeah, someone changing the system. So you're literally reversing.
I do think if we want to move to this topic, Republicans were not always like this. Growing up in the 80s and 90s in Dallas, Texas, Republicans wore khaki pants, blue blazers. They were
the party
a lawyer. It's the party of the rich in many ways. The party of the party of the decent rich as well. what Trump represents is not that. Michael Moore nailed it when he said it is a resentment ideology. On that one day of the year, a homeless person has the same amount of power as a billionaire. And because they both have one vote and they can just clock the system right in the face and just say, F you all. That is what Trumpism thrives on, is that sort of resentment bordering on nihilism. I don't think conservatives have any sort...
Where does the nihilism come in here? Why is it...
You want to tear it all down? I would call that nihilistic.
You kind of insert this over and over. But it doesn't seem like they want to tear it all down. It seems like they want to empty a lot of the players who are bad players. They don't want to tear the institutions down. They want to take them back. They don't want this kind of idea that Trumpism is based around burn it down and we'll start over again. It doesn't.
I feel a lot of Trumpism, to be honest.
It seems to be mostly based around they want to get rid of bad actors. They want to get rid of bad actors. That's what Drain the Swamp was all about.
I want to add. I think a lot of what Richard is saying about the United States had never been like a Finland is a very, very good point. This is true. The states themselves were unto themselves as sovereign, effectively sovereign states.
Yeah.
Civil War changed everything. And I'm trying to pinpoint a time in the United States where there wasn't a rapid shift and change. And honestly, we have these periods. We had the Revolutionary period, which is again, there's no nation state. We're just beholden to the crown. We break free from it over this 20-year period. We then get 80 or so years of expansion into the West, new states forming new territories, which leads to the Civil War. And this transforms this weak republic, like a weak federal union of sovereign states, into a solid nation for the first time. The famous saying being, pre-Civil War, it was the United States are, and post-Civil War, the United States is.
Right.
Then you get about 60 or so years until you get this militaristic expansionism internationally with, you get the Federal Reserve and central banking, a dramatic change. And so I think it's a good point. I'm not saying, I actually still, my view would be that Trump is a stabilizing force for America in this decline in a way that restores our vision of what things need to be, how they were better before. But I do think it's interesting, the point you're making, that Biden is an agent of the United States is a strung together hodgepodge that must be strung together at all costs.
Right.
Not that I agree with his definitions.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. I understand that. And I think in 2016, there was a sort of another Trump. I mean, you mentioned yourself, he did all of the LGBTQ stuff and, yes, it would be wonderful if
he did some pandering.
If it drag queens at Miss Universe, I love it.
I'm not thrilled about the pandering there, right? But there's a big distinction to be made.
What's interesting in 2015 and 2016, he was a sort of center left type, center liberal type figure. He was arguably to the left on a lot of issues of Hillary Clinton, who voted for the Iraq War.
He was a total populist who wanted to the first thing he did was try to shut down Muslims from coming into the country.
I agree with that.
He wanted to shut down the border and build a massive wall.
He also said...
what are you talking about?
He also said a massive wall is a stabilizing force. He also said... we're not going to he supported socialized medicine, national healthcare system in a book called The America We Deserve 10 years before he ran. He actually started his campaign at Geo Proud, a Republican gay event, or as we should say, a Republican event. At CPAC in 2014. He promised more or less that we would have paid family leave for women in corporations, which I supported, would have been pro-natalist and other things. He basically offered himself as, we have this system here. He said this directly. I know how the system works. I have manipulated the system myself. I'm going to start making it work for you. There is a sort of, it's populist. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But there's populism often manifests as a sort of centrism that I think Trump offered in 2016.
I don't think
that
there
was
much centrism. When you look at tax policy, when you look at financial policy.
That's what happened.
When you look at what happens with his policies with corporations, he gives them these massive tax breaks. This was completely against the progressive ethos of, wait, you're going to give corporations tax breaks and a trickle down style economics. You're going to build a wall on the border. You're going to put in a symbol that the United States is not open for business. You're going to move towards isolationism. That is not center left of Hillary Clinton, dude.
In a way it is.
What way?
Well, let me explain. Paul Tsongas, when he was running for president in the 90s, he said, the Cold War is over, and guess who won? Germany and Japan. So the Axis powers in the World War II. There is a strain on the Democratic Party towards a sort of isolationism and nationalism of we want to build cars here and so on. You still hear... There is historically. I mean, I'd agree that there's.
Well, there isn't now.
So I thought you were talking about right now.
There is now to a degree.
Where?
Union people, old style Democrats, Joe Biden.
The unions are not trying to commercially build anything. Unions now are just going.
This is the man who did the CHIP Act.
They move parasitically.
The CHIPS Act is literally about national defense. That's the only reason that it moved through is because it can be related to the DoD.
The American middle class was built on national defense. The American middle class that you guys love arose during the Cold War, and the degree to which it benefited from that type of system can't be underestimated.
That's true. It happened at the same time, but it's because of the post-World War II soldiers coming back. They had the GI Bill. They had tons of money stashed away. They were getting married. They were getting married very, very, very young, quickly. They were starting families because
college was socialized.
They hadn't seen a woman in 3.5 years and were fighting Nazis. So they got home. They married their chicks. They had a ton of kids, and they went right to work. It was a whole different. It wasn't because of the Cold War, but on top of that, kind of moving back to this idea that these center left, that Trump was center left, due to the fact that inside of the Democrat Party, trade unions want to somehow bring work back to the United States. That's not how they operate. They parasitically go company to company, and they get a union, and then they just begin to rake over the coals any of the profiteering of that company.
That might be true. All I'm pointing to is a sort of strain within the Democratic Party that you actually didn't see in a more globalist economic party. But let me.
I don't see this union. I don't see this big strain. I don't want to get caught.
I don't want to get caught up on that. What happened to Trump, and this actually happened in late 2016, like December 2016, is that he brought in Mnuchin. Steve Bannon said this himself. He was like, MAGA is going to marry with the conservative movement and so on. So they brought in these Republican parties, and he basically implemented Paul Ryan's agenda. Paul Ryan's agenda is tax cuts, getting rid of Obamacare. The government shouldn't do anything. You should be able to drown it in a bathtub, et cetera, et cetera. That is what Trump fundamentally did in the first 2 years of his term.
It does not sound anything like what Clinton's agenda was.
I agree. What my point was that what Trump offered in a granted vague way in 2016 was a sort of centrism, in fact. He did not implement that in office, and that's one of the reasons, a primary reason why I soured on him. I'm a centrist.
Of Trump was not what got him elected. It was not this idea of, I'm going to pander to the left and I'm going to pander to what he said was, I know the system and I know that there are a bunch of corrupt, dirty bastards that are going to do what I say or we're going to put him in jail. That's what he was moving towards with MAGA.
So I think getting hung up on definitions and the different views of like the word centrist, what is centrist, I don't want to get lost in that stuff.
Sure.
What I will add is it is actually a big deal. 9 million Obama voters switched from the Democratic Party to vote Republican because of Donald Trump. And a large reason was Donald Trump saying, secure the borders, bring our jobs back, which for a long time was traditionally the Democrat position. And you notoriously had the Koch brothers, which were more in favor of immigration for labor.
Yes.
So Trump kind of flipped the script on that. And we saw in 2016, Vox.com, the leftist Vox, called Trump a moderate and also said that the Democrats had become the party of the wealthy.
That was to defame him, though. A lot of these things are designed specifically.
For sure.
Yeah, specifically to defame Trump, to make him look bad, in front of his base, this kind of thing. To say that action on the southern border or that leftists don't absolutely adore mass migration from South America is insane. They love it.
But let's not get caught up on the perspective shift, right? So let's go back to the battle. Was it the battle in Seattle or the Battle of Seattle? You guys are familiar with this?
Yeah.
1999 World Trade Organization protest where leftists took over city streets to stop free trade agreements internationally with the World Trade Organization. And it was Barack Obama championing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and it was Donald Trump who destroyed it. which is weird in a lot of ways for and this is where I come from, right? Like I'm in this anti-war, anti-internet, like the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, giving foreign corporations legal authority in some respects over United States citizens was ridiculous. These free trade agreements have driven our manufacturing base it's recovered a little bit, but out of the country to China, to Mexico, to Indonesia, to Cambodia.
Yeah, but that was all Clinton era stuff.
Right.
North America free trade.
And you ended up with leftists that were protesting all this stuff. And then when Bush comes in, anti-war, Obama adopts those same policies that were considered like neocon right-wing policies. He adopts open border. Well, they call them deporter-in-chief, but the open borders trade stuff I'm specifically referring to with like with NAFTA and things like this.
He deported more people than Trump.
Yeah, they called him deporter-in-chief. They really did not like that guy. But I'll just put it this way. Trump, as a Republican, brought in, he basically embraced populist ideas that were typically associated with Democrats in a lot of ways. I don't think are necessarily left or right economically. Supporting the working class and union workers, I don't see as leftist. We should be populist and for the people, but the machine's view is at the time that the definitions moved around.
So yeah,
actually, what I'm trying to say is when we argue like, oh, Trump was left, Trump was centrist, Trump was right, I'm like, I don't know that matters as much because how we view left, right, and center today is very different from where it was 10 or even 20 years ago.
Yeah, but if the question is Joe Biden conservative, then kind of the semantic distinctions matter, right? We're kind of talking about what is in modernity. So I understand that you can make kind of the claim these definitions shift over time, right? Okay, sure, they shift over time. But we're talking about right now, what is a conservative? What is a liberal? What is a center-rightist? Clearly, these policies, when we're discussing these policies, Trump was not center-left of Hillary Clinton at all, at least not from my perspective.
Why I want to bring back coal mining? I mean, there was this reactionary liberalism. That was a big thing in 2016. How is that a
reactionary liberalism?
I want to say that I agree with Andrew over here. I do not believe in any way you can argue Joe Biden is a conservative.
No, I don't either. I just don't.
Because even if the argument is preserving the status quo, I think you described it as managing its decline is not preserving the status quo. I view
that's the most conservative thing you could do is manage a decline. I mean, that's. That's what he's doing.
In the purest argument of conservatism is to conserve the status quo. What I see with MAGA world versus the neo-lib, which includes the pocket of weird leftists they're trying to manage, their attitude is international hegemonic authority protects the petrodollar and maintains our machine.
Right.
Donald Trump's view is more so, this machine is falling apart. We need to shore up our defenses and make sure we can function after this happens. So the Biden worldview is it's all falling apart. Let's ride the wave and take it. I describe it as the Titanic has hit the iceberg. The Biden Democrat side is grab as much fine china and silverware as you can and get to the lifeboats before anyone realizes it happened. And the Trump side is let's try and steer towards shallow shores so we can all survive and then try and rebuild this thing.
Well, and this is a good point. So another way to kind of look at this is even if we were to be very charitable with how you're kind of defining this, Richard, they're both of them would be managing the decline. Right, both of them. So
I agree with that. I agree with that to some extent. But I think Trump, due to his personality, due to the fact that he has responded to liberals in their attacks on him, most of which or many of which are completely unfair. The whole Pussy Daniels thing in New York, this is just ridiculous. He has responded to that with "fuck you, I'm never backing down, I am winning. J6 was nothing, or it was good, it was great," whatever he says. Like, that is a challenge to the system. If someone is going to push the ship into rocky waters, to continue the metaphor, it actually is going to be Trump, oddly due to kind of personal reasons and not ideology. But he is threatening their institutions. When liberals say we want to maintain democracy or so on, what they're really saying is like, we want to just maintain this. the way life works. We're going to
I
manage
don't disagree. It's like just
Trump
trying to throw a bone.
is really challenging it, and I
agree.
think we're actually headed towards a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't think he's challenging it by trying to institute kind of a progressive agenda or progressivism. I think he's trying to move an agenda to a sane agenda of not even if it's not complete isolationism. The immigration's the big one. This is the thing that people have been upset about for the last 15 years. They're so pissed off they can't see straight about the fact that our country's wide open. When they see what's going on at the southern border right now with Biden basically just throwing it open. Come on in, everybody. Have a good time. It's a big party over here. We're going to put you up in hotels. We're going to give you amnesty. That is what I would expect from kind of the modern progressive status quo of let's get more in to complete this progressive agenda.
I actually...
And he is a challenge to that. That's the big one.
I actually don't think that Trumpism is entirely about the border.
It's not
Hold on. Let me just make the point. I think it's actually about a bigger generational and demographic anxiety that conservatives feel, and they have no place to push that energy outside of the border. So it's unquestionably things have changed. Not everywhere, not where I live, not where a lot of other people live, but you don't, as they say, Tucker Carlson would say, or whatever, you don't recognize your hometown due to demographic change. And I would say also that is, and it's not just illegal immigrant Mexicans. Illegal immigrant people coming from Mexico, they'll come, they'll go, they'll set up shop here, they'll work in agriculture, they'll go home, they'll send their money home. That's a kind of transitory thing. We have legal immigration that has fundamentally changed the demographics of the country. And it's changed at the elite level before it even changed in your small town.
Yeah, that's true.
So Princeton University has a minority white student body coming in since like 2020. Your local news had a kind of like brunette woman and a black guy as the anchors like 30 years ago.
Domestic Americans see themselves
demonstrating
because
a different
of this as being under siege. They have the illegals to the south, laying siege to the southern states, and then the Democrat policy of pumping in 1 to 1.5 million per year.
I get it.
Yes, massive demographic.
I get it. There's a general anxiety that's in many ways unspeakable. I'm willing to talk about it seriously. Most people, they don't want to. It's nasty. You're going to be called racist, etc. That anxiety gave birth to Trumpism and the wall meme.
I think
I would say that that's not progressivism in any way, shape, or form.
Every generation goes through this, and you can actually read about it going back to antiquity. It's fascinating to read, like carved in a stone tablet. What have we lost as the next generation is taking over and they shun our values and our traditions?
Yeah.
Everybody goes through this where they remember being a kid and the fun things, the good things their parents gave to them.
Yeah.
I think the problem right now is the acceleration of loss. So, my grandpa, my parents, my friends, grandparents have said like, back when I was a kid, this is how things were. Things got different. Technology changed. Our the way we did things changed. Today, a good example is we talk about free speech. We're all about free speech. George Carlin went to jail for swearing, I think more than once. We had blasphemy laws back in the day.
Yeah.
So when we talk about America back in the 1800s or the late 1700s at its formation, and they said free speech was in the Constitution. Yeah, but there were blasphemy laws. You could, it didn't matter what the laws were written down.
Good.
You would go to jail for speaking out of line with the local community.
No question.
I think what we're seeing now is social media as a major factor, as well as a massive unfettered migration, has ripped it away way too quickly. And so I look at how things used to be pre-internet. The people on the TV would tell you what was so, and people believed it. And this was always pushing the country in a liberal direction, a progressive direction. And I mean by the modern definition of things. Acceptance of various groups. Now, it was gay marriage. Now it's LGBTQIA2S+ or whatever. The internet emerges, and all of a sudden, real conservatives had a means to defend their culture and create cultural pockets that actually formed a barrier.
Wait. But back up for me, Tim, because I'm not really sure I agree with this take. Conservatives already had that means through AM radio. So AM radio, pre-internet, the Rush Limbaughs of the world.
When did Rush Limbaugh first come onto the scene and like AM radio got big?
90s.
Right.
Yeah. 90s.
So
this was pre-internet world.
Tim's right. Look,
and that's the same time as the internet, actually.
yeah.
People didn't have. Not only did they not really have much access to the internet, but
the emergence of the internet. So I agree. Rush Limbaugh burst onto the scene to a massive audience, much larger than the internet. Mm-hmm. It is still around the same time that we saw conservatives begin to defend their culture from a media machine that was intent on destroying it.
Yeah, but I think that the AM radio and these guys like Michael Savage and Rush Limbaugh and tons of these guys. I mean, Savage was talking about what culture, borders, language, all throughout the 90s, right?
But I don't think this is countering the point that I'm making.
Yeah, it's not. Let me in a weird way defend the liberals once again, because I guess that's my job on this show. My new identity. But okay, there's a
liberal Spencer.
Hold on, I'm sure they love the fact that Richard Spencer is taking their side. They're just like, come on, you're on board now.
Real quick, sorry. Did you see? I don't know if this is real, but Fuentes called AOC America First. Is that real?
Yeah.
And she said, "How dare you?"
Yeah. That's the greeting you receive. Jacques Ellul is a very interesting author. He wrote about the technological society. So we used to have a center of society that was the church, that was your local town involving agriculture and so on. Course of the 19th century, you're moving into cities, you're working 9 to 5, you've left the land, you're going to church less, they have less authority. And so you need some sort of structuring of your mind and life. He actually called this propaganda in a different sense than that word that we know today, outright. Yeah, without the negative connotations of like a pro-war bonds poster or whatever. He called it propaganda. What it was is you vote this one day in November. You might go to church on Sunday. You watch the nightly news at 5 p.m. They tell you what's important, all the news that's fit to print. You subscribe to your local paper, maybe the Wall Street Journal, maybe the New York Times. That was my life in the 90s as well. Now, you could say that they were like slowly destroying culture, promoting liberalism, and I won't really disagree with you, but they also structured people's lives. And, it's interesting that I'm on the Tim Pool show because I think you're in a way part of this. I think you're part of something in a way that you have mixed feelings about. And that's interesting.
Yeah, but hold on. What is that?
Hold on. The fragmentation of America. So everyone watched the World Series. Everyone read the paper in the morning. Everyone watched Tom Brokaw or Cronkite at 5 p.m. or whenever. That was a unified country. Now, someone who's watching your show is speaking a different language and is totally disconnected and isolated from someone watching MSNBC or someone watching Vaush or something like that. And that is, you have to, even if you're a part of it, even if you obviously support it, there is a certain tragedy in there. And
But I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
That was the point that I was making. Mm-hmm. It wasn't always this way. Each state, each community had their own paper. They had their own community. They would meet at church. They would discuss things with the community at church. They would believe things based on how they lived and where they lived. With the rise of mass media and the conglomeration of it, you ended up with massive corporations in league with the government. We learned this in the 70s with, what was the name of the hearing? Luke knows this better than me. The Warren Commission, I think it was, where the CIA was infiltrating media organizations.
Yeah.
They had what you're saying, Richard. They said, everybody watches Brokaw. Everybody watches the World Series. This is the pinnacle of culture, and we control it. With the rise of, in the 90s, actually, Rush Limbaugh pulled it up, 88 was the start of his show. Syndication, I believe, national syndication was 92 or something like this. Drudge Report was 95.
Yeah.
This is when conservatives started saying, they're intent on destroying us.
Right.
They are saying things that are not true. They are insulting the way I live, but they controlled the broadcast towers. Things started to flatten out as to what you're describing, and now I think a big component of the culture war is that for the first time, those who believe in conservative values have a massive foothold in media.
In alt media, yep.
Yes.
But it's becoming mainstream.
But the irony...
The corporate press is...
It's starting to, but this is my pushback on this, is that So, I mean, you're right when it comes to, kind of the mass corporate media. They were structuring people's lives, and conservatives came on the scene, those bastards. And in the 90s with their AM waves, they started creating waves and hitting back at Tom Brokaw, who told you to eat your macaroni and cheese at night, okay? And whatever it is that he's commercializing, taking away their precious structure. But the truth is that they were moving towards that anyway. They were moving towards this kind of, even this control grid of inclusivity, which is moving that way in mainstream media. It was inevitable. It would be inevitable even without the internet for there to be massive cultural pushback to this, even if there was just the man on the screen of the propaganda machine, 1984 style.
Well, that might be true. We obviously had massive disruption before the internet. The 1960s was a massive generational disruption.
And the 70s.
Disruption. And that was coming
and the 80s.
I agree. It's coming through music, but this is where we are now. And we can't talk to each other. People are in their own echo chambers. Can you name a sitcom on NBC? Like, name one.
On NBC, I watch CBS.
Okay. Well, okay. My rhetorical point is basically that when I was growing up, everyone knew Cosby Show, Family Ties, Cheers,
TGIF.
TGIF.
Yeah,
Look,
but that was the
my
venue
mom
for
would order.
entertainment.
My dad would come home late. My mom would order Domino's pizza, and we'd all be together. We don't have a nation like that anymore, and that is a tragedy.
And I want to make this point. I've been dying to make because I'm watching that show Evil on CBS. Have you guys ever seen it?
No.
Oh, it sounds good.
It is.
I want to.
It is the weirdest show. It's pro-Catholic. I'm not kidding. One of the main characters just got ordained as a priest. They talk about how God, like, there's very much a big message about being with God and how God will protect you. And there's demons that Satanists are viewed. There's a character who's got a Satanist church, and he's just lying for money, and he's laughing about it. They overtly show demons torturing people and stuff like this. But then there's this scene I just saw in season 3, and this is the point about mainstream narratives and culture. The mother has one of the main characters has 4 kids. They're all girls, and she says, we're going to make a family 10 commandments that you must follow. And the first one is, thou shalt not lie to mom. And then one girl goes, but can we lie to other people? And she goes, no. And she goes, what if we're hiding Jews like with Hitler, or we're hiding immigrants like with Trump? Hiding immigrants like with Trump. And she goes, those are good points, but we'll talk about that later. That's the kind of stuff they inject in these mass corporation shows. And I suppose the argument from someone like Seamus, or perhaps you, but you're not Catholic, are you?
No, I'm Orthodox.
Okay. It's like they work for the Catholic Church and things like this. I think the argument would be they're trying to inject their message to Catholics, so they're trying to Trojan horse it. But the idea that in a mainstream show,
Catholics love that message.
but that's why this is why I'm saying, like, I'm not sure I would agree with that argument. Like, they're actually showing Catholics as the good guy and Satan worshipers as the bad guy, and Baphomet as the bad guy and things like this. Literally, there's a giant Baphomet like goat creature that is the evil demon. But then they say things like Trump is like Hitler with the Jews, but with immigrants. And they say that really quickly and passively as something you must accept.
Yeah, but that's how you sell the best lies, is with mostly truth, right? So you sell kind of the best lies if there's mostly truth behind it. So it wouldn't surprise me if they had a great dynamic with good and evil, and then it piques your interest and you're involved, and then they kind of associate these things which aren't evil with evil.
This is actually a well-known social engineering and manipulation technique, is to make an argument that is not your real argument. Within your argument, you presuppose something as truth, as an aside.
Sure.
Which is to say something like, look, I think Trump is bad because his tax policy does X, Y, and Z. For instance, when China did A, B, and C, Donald Trump's response was, the real argument I'm trying to make is about China's policies, and I'm masking it by assuming it's true within a separate argument I'm trying to convince you of. So they make a show, they say, here's what's going on, and then in a split second they say, Trump is going to attack immigrants like Hitler attacked the Jews, was the point they were making in that show. So anyway, to wrap this up, if it were not for AM radio at the time, which now definitely has shifted more to podcasting and social media, that would be the presupposed truth.
Right.
When these comedians go on late night and just assert a thing is true, like Colbert does. I can't remember what it was. It was with the civil fraud case and Trump. And Colbert, in a frantic rant, just asserts these things as fact, omitting all of the key details of the case. And there are, fortunately, substantially less people who watch that show today than used to. So their influence is waning. Were it not for the rise of technology and the capabilities of your average person to point a camera at their face and say whatever they want and broadcast that message, it'd be 25 million people watching Colbert say that. They'd all show up at work the next day and just say, it is the truth. Trump has done this.
But the tragedy is you need to control a society. Like the church had a social function. The church wasn't just some private thing you did on weekends. The church organized society. It told you what's up, what's down, what's left and right. Yep. There needs to be some mechanism for that. And the question is, can a nation persist once that is broken down? Once there is not some central apparatus that is informing your basic conceptions, can a nation exist?
Yeah, but I don't think it's liberal, progressive, state, or anarchy. Like it seems like such a kind of massive spread here to say, if it's not some type of centralized progressive state that tells you what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the sitcoms, then it has to be anarchy.
I just said an apparatus to control the psyche of the nation. That's what I said.
I think we'd all agree. Would you prefer if every major corporation, Disney, maintained Christian moral frameworking on all their content?
Yeah, I would prefer it.
Absolutely. That's the culture war. And this is why I often tell people laws don't matter. The laws matter in that if you break them, you go to jail.
Sure. Right.
But whether or not a police officer is willing to enforce that law is more dependent on the culture. Example, in West Virginia, drag shows in public are illegal. Including children with them as an aggravated offense, and the police, the DA, and the state will do nothing to stop it because they're terrified of the cultural ramifications.
But I think that culture, just like politics is downwind of culture, I think culture is downwind of theology. I think that what informs culture at its base is always theological, and it's always the ethics behind that theology, which then moves into the mainstream. And if you want to know why you have such a cultural breakdown now, you can just look at how effed up the theology is. How messed up the theology is. It's across the board. Nobody can agree on any of it.
What is it? Like they think there's neither Greek nor Jew, man or woman. We're all one. Is that what?
But it could be the idea of monism, sure, or it could be the idea of, like you were saying, there's no central Catholic kind of synergistic relationship with the state anymore.
So I don't disagree. My point was simply, as Richard was mentioning, an apparatus of culture. I'm pretty sure that every conservative would love it if every television network, every movie studio maintained Christian moral frameworking for all their content. The problem is that degenerate leftists have infiltrated major institutions. The New York Times is a really great example. You've had people who have used to work there quitting saying it's been taken over. The Washington Post is a really great example. Their executive editor comes in and says, no one is reading what you're writing. This ship is sinking. And the response from the staff was, have you considered hiring black women? I'm not kidding. They said to him, well, why aren't you hiring more black women? And it's like, that doesn't matter to whether or not the person will be good at what they do. So long story short, if there was cultural, I guess, unanimity within certain bounds, this would be a good thing.
I mean, if you had a homogenous culture, but you have to have glue for that. There has to be some glue that holds it together.
I completely agree.
So
I agree with that. But conservatives
hang on. So what Richard's saying is, he goes, okay, there's kind of like a centralized kind of government liberal authority that's kind of telling you what it is that you need to do, and it's kind of structuring your day, right? And the kind of Christian response to this is, yeah, I mean, okay, I guess they can tell you that Kellogg's Frosted Flakes is okay to eat. That's fine. But it's not really giving you any kind of grounding for oughts, what you should be doing, right? It says, here's what you can do. Here's kind of within the framework of society, but our oughts of what we're supposed to be moving towards. Should we be having kids? Should we be having a family? What does that look like? Does that look like two dads? Does that look like a dad and a mom? Does that look like two dads? Does that look like polygamy?
I agree with you. But liberalism had a master narrative. And as I said, 30 minutes ago, that master narrative is breaking down, and it's the bottom of the barrel.
But it was always going to break down.
Well, okay, all master narratives are always going to break down.
Yeah, it was always going to, but this one was going to accelerate itself to its own demise.
I don't necessarily agree that all they all break down. Master narratives break down. The liberal one certainly does, because it requires a function in the real world to maintain itself. Yeah. If everyone is equal, there's no more fight. Right. So they constantly have to find someone who is not to maintain their battle. But I look at the traditional moral framework in the United States, Enlightenment principles and Christian moral values, I don't see that as a master narrative ever breaking down without an external attack to destroy it.
No, I think it will lead to what we are. I mean, I guess
Enlightenment principles.
I'm
that
a
is
bit of a
now. That is what progressivism came out of.
I'm a bit of a Hegelian here. Like, we understand what America was because we're living what America is, in the sense that you can claim rightly that the founding fathers would be totally, their minds would boggle if they walked through the streets of San Francisco. Or I obviously agree with that statement.
They would scream.
But it doesn't matter, because all that means is that they didn't fully understand their religion or their ideology that they put forward. America is what it is. What exists now reveals to you what the root idea was at the beginning.
No, I think they did understand their ideology. They had limited suffrage for a reason. They didn't want everybody and their brother to vote for a reason. They didn't think that the general America... You wouldn't have to brainwash these people, would you, Richard, if you didn't give them any political power? You wouldn't need to always have them brainwashed constantly. It wouldn't even be necessary.
Always successful? Why is it always successful? Why?
It's not always successful. It's a brand new experiment. Universal suffrage, brand new. Brand new.
Why has the American narrative been towards liberalism? And conservatism, I would say, is largely vacuous and negative. Okay, go on.
I think where we are in this country is an obvious... It's an obvious endpoint from where the founding fathers were to where we are now that they could not have predicted. I think that asserting a moral value or a moral principle or enshrining that in your government, people often don't realize it. All that is required for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing. The founding fathers' assumption of let's enshrine these values. And then I believe it was the anti-federalists who wanted. No, it was the Federalists who wanted the Bill of Rights, or was the anti-federal? I mix them up. They wanted the Bill of Rights. They said, we want to make sure that this is written down in the Constitution. So they propose a Constitution. They say, no. 17 articles.
He was a Federalist, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Madison
was a Federalist, and then Jefferson was the anti-federalist.
Right.
It was the Federalists who wanted the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Either way, the point was
make your point. Yeah.
Right. And so the assumptions made are, this is a good thing that we're going to allow the people to have a say in their government. That doesn't mean they're like, this should lead to a point of universal suffrage.
No, that was not the intention at all.
All men are created equal. That root idea has consequences.
Yeah, but the idea of the Christian ethic, and always the idea of the Christian ethic, is that the ontology of men and women, not the same. Not the same. So this idea that the Christian ethicists of the time believed in the universalism of suffrage, meaning spiritual equality, is fucking insane.
They didn't believe in releasing the slaves, or at least a lot of them. That was obviously a massive issue during the Constitutional
or letting
Convention.
women vote.
What I'm saying is those
for a good reason.
Those root ideas in 1776. I mean, look, if you go to like the Northeast, Samuel Adams was kind of Thomas Paine. You have a book here. These are like left-wing rabble rousers. The imagining
at the time, absolutely,
imagining a new age. So what I'm saying is root ideas will have consequences. Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner who promoted, at the end of the day, an ideology that would overturn Monticello.
But so let me wrap up that point I was making.
Yeah.
For one, Jefferson was opposed to slavery, insofar as you could be at the time. But no, this is it seems paradoxical. It's not.
They had it They had it outlawed. It was universally outlawed. The thing is it's like grandfather.
Right. It's like saying I oppose the Federal Reserve and want to see it abolished. I use the banks. I get bank loans. I have mortgages.
Sure.
And one could argue, why doesn't he just give up those slaves?
Right.
Because there's a tinge of hypocrisy in all of it. But famously, he wanted to include one of the grievances in the Declaration of Independence was that it was the Crown that brought slaves here and has now used them to levy war against us. But I believe it was South Carolina and Georgia would not have joined the movement for independence if they had a staunch anti-slavery notion that this will be the direction we go. That being said, the ultimate point is Frederick Douglass, dude, amazing. he actually one of the points he made is that you have written into your own constitutions of your values, all men are created equal. I dare you, I challenge you to believe that.
Right.
And people got pissed. They were like, "No, how dare you? Like, we should have slaves." And he was like, "These are your words, not mine."
And let's remember too that that enshrining this in a declaration, it's wonderful propaganda, but it was not meaningfully put in our Constitution. So it was not meaningfully.
Well, neither
put
were orthodox values.
Universal. So yeah, I think that a lot of baseline Christian ethical values were put in.
It's
in
fair
the
to
Constitution.
say.
So like originally, the colonies all had state religions. They all of them.
It's fair to say that they assumed those because that they lived in the 18th and early 19th century. It's fair to say that. But the fact is they didn't do that. They didn't establish a church. There were multiple churches and states, congregations.
No, they let states establish the church.
That's what I just said. But they didn't actually create that. They created
They couldn't create a national church because of Protestantism. That's the only reason.
This is the funny thing about why the founding fathers didn't want state religion. They were like, well, we all agree everybody believes in Christ. We just kind of have different branches of Christianity, so we probably shouldn't enshrine one of them. I don't know if they realized that meant where we would be in 200 years with.
Well, did Jefferson not realize that, being that he
was the
edited the
one
Bible and
Yeah.
he did
try to get rid of state religions.
gravestone, he said the freedom of religion in Virginia was like his finest
Yeah.
accomplishment. So, I mean, there was that ideology.
Hang on. There was some of these guys who were deists, okay? And the deists,
Most of them.
Yeah, not most of them. All of the contributors to the Constitution were not deists, but there were a few prominent deists. The thing is, though, is that it was understood that you had the 10th Amendment and that if the federal government wasn't making a national religion, that the states could make their own prospective religions.
But the
idea that the First Amendment created some barrier from states creating their own that's crazy. That is not substantive at all.
I agree with you on a kind of legalistic framework. The Congregationalist Church in Massachusetts was a long-time state church in effect. But isn't it remarkable that eventually all of those state constitutions outlawed any sort of state church? Isn't it remarkable that without exception, we went in one direction? Isn't that remarkable? Doesn't that reveal something about the time?
I agree with you.
The ideology at the heart of the founding.
That Enlightenment values were always going to lead to kind of progressive degeneracy. That was always going to be the case. I don't disagree. I'm saying that that's bad. And I'm also saying that when we're talking about, in modernity, conservation, we're really only talking about one thing: conservation of non-degenerate Christian ethics. That's really what everybody's talking about, even though they pretend it's subtext, they pretend that it's kind of outside of the scope of the conversation politically. It really isn't. That's really what they're all talking about.
In an enlightened nation, whether you like it or not. That's what America is.
Okay, so I agree that there's Enlightenment principles, but I don't think everybody lives as though that's true. No, I don't think so. I think that Enlightenment principles lead to degradation, degeneracy, but I think you can still have stabilization absent progressivism. I don't know why you need to have progressivism to stabilize the nation.
Is your argument that Enlightenment principles lead to degeneration?
They have to, yeah.
Yeah,
they're a natural consequence.
And I think this is correct. That's what I was saying before. I think where we are now is a natural end result of the founding fathers laying things out. Mm-hmm. The issue is not that the ideas were bad. The issue is, we had a conversation a couple of years ago on Tim Castellaro.
I do think the ideas were bad, honestly.
Well, some ideas are bad. Yeah. But we had a conversation about gay marriage, and there were conservatives saying gay marriage should never have been allowed because it was the slippery slope that led to where we are with all these bad things in public, children being exposed to things, the grooming problem, the books. Yeah. And I disagree. My argument, just because you open the door to one thing doesn't mean you should tolerate anything that comes after it. The issue is not that the idea of gay marriage is bad. Now, if you're a Christian, I totally understand why you would think that. But the problem is weak men who allow bad things. Yeah. So if we come to agree, fine, in the privacy of your home, you can do whatever you want. Just not in public, not around kids, not in schools. What happens later is weak men continue to tolerate over and over and over again. And so the argument I've made, and it's somewhat facetious, is that the problem ultimately was white Christians are weak people, especially when you look relatively to Muslims. Muslims do not tolerate this. The conservative Muslim nations are very bad on the issue. And I'm speaking lightly on how bad they are on the issue. But if you look to even places like Dearborn, Michigan, they do not care for what our laws are in this country. They will do what they want. You look at places in the UK where they have the women have to wear niqab and hijab, how they protest BTQ stuff. I had a friend in Chicago whose family were Muslim. They would not allow any man into the house. The only family members were allowed in because the women were there and the women were covered. Conservative Christian men are very tolerant, and they tolerate everything. And as the generations progress, they're always willing to accept a little bit more tolerance.
Protestant Christian men are very tolerant.
Give me a break. Catholics vote the Democrats more than Protestants do. Protestants and Mormons are the biggest supporters of MAGA.
This is an issuance of modernity only in Catholicism. But what's going on? You see the guys like AF and the Fuentes crowd, this type of what are they all talking about? Move it back. Forget this. Forget whatever this new woke Catholic stuff is. We're done with that.
Are they Catholics?
Yeah, they're predominantly a Catholic organization.
Yes.
And they say, no, forget the degeneracy. We're done with it. You have even the Pope getting pressure from his base saying, no, because it's the bottom-up portion of that organization controls the money. And they're not going to give it to you if the Pope is out there running a degen campaign. They don't like it.
Yeah.
They're having a big trouble with it. Orthodox nations, Eastern Europe, they don't put up with shit. They don't put up with none of it. They'll go in and shut down your gay pride parade in 5 seconds.
Can we look at those election map of like if only men voted? Can we look at an election map if only Catholics voted?
You mean inside the United States? Yeah, there's a lot of progressives, but it's very tiny here. The footprint is tiny here.
Well, it's a much, much smaller footprint that Nick Fuentes is laying of we need to go back to our traditions, which is monarchical.
Yeah, but what's going to happen is you're going to see as people move more towards traditional, any type of traditional Christianity, they are going to become more and more conservative. They have to, and that's why they're moving towards traditional Christianity. Even in the Protestant sects, which are blowing up, they're more conservative sects. They are more conservative. The ones that are more progressive, more liberal, have the rainbow flags outside their churches. They're being left in droves, and you're going to see more and more and more of that.
I don't fully agree. I don't fully disagree with that. Interestingly, mainline Protestantism has had a little bit of a boost, and recently, and that might be aberrational or whatever. Also, the Southern Baptist Convention continually declines.
That's because the Southern Baptist Convention is talking about ratifying female clergy and LGBTQ.
Yeah, but unchurched people continues to rise. In fact, unchurched and outright atheists are at the level in terms of the public as evangelicals were in the Bush era. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's actually a remarkable thing.
It's true
they're
that
not being pandered to.
Secularism continues to rise, but it's because of the fractured Protestant belief structures.
Don't stop blaming Protestants. Give me a break.
I'm sorry, but
this is making me
the backbone of Enlightenment principles was pushed by Protestants. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
Italy is a Catholic country where you have far less church attendance than the United States, and you have a far lower birth rate. So don't give me this nonsense that like the Catholics are going to save us or something. Give me a break.
Who follows Enlightenment principles like most of Western Europe does. Eastern Europe doesn't follow those principles, and you don't see that. That's what you don't see.
The Soviet Union, ironically.
I want to point out.
There are far more atheists. Russia's far more atheists than the United States.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I just want to quickly point out, because people like to argue against this, but I don't believe it. I believe that at the end of the day, all of this is stamp collecting when you look at fertility rates.
Yeah.
You don't have kids, you don't exist.
That's right.
And it is true that the left will try to indoctrinate young conservative kids, and they succeeded at it. But so long as parents are becoming aware of the issue and keeping their kids safe, 40 years, this is going to be a
not only that, but the chances of your children, if you're Christians and you have children, chances are they're going to be Christian as well. So it's like if you have Muslim parents, you're going to be Muslim, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have 4 and the liberals get 1, you're still 3 ahead. If you're running a numbers game, the secularists, the secularists themselves are not doing so hot here. Okay,
And
they're breeding far less than everybody else. The staunch religious are breeding more than anybody else.
And if this doesn't sell you out there to have kids, you know, the more kids you have, the higher likelihood one of them will become famous and rich and take care of you. So, you know, have kids.
Also, the other thing is it's better to have 2 than 1 because 2, they take care of each other. Right. Okay. So the thing is like just from a practical, lazy standpoint, right? Have more than 1. But we're not even having more than 1 on average. And secularists, because they're nihilist, like you, Richard, move towards the nihilism.
Are you a nihilist?
There's no. He's a political nihilist, at least. There's no good reason.
What does that mean?
I'm not a nihilist.
Well, come on. You keep on going for these kind of status quo argument for nihilism, really. Isn't it accelerationism ultimately what you're after here?
Accelerationism, as defined, is the worse the better. Let's just make it worse and worse and worse. No, I actually think Trump is a sort of accelerant. But I wouldn't mind. We've got time. I wouldn't mind talking about the demographic issue because I think they're kind of like countervailing forces, and I don't know exactly how I feel about this. So.
What do you mean the demographic issue?
Evangelical vis-a-vis, say, Anglicans or Episcopalians, my stomping grounds. Mm-hmm. Evangelicals are having like 3 kids to an Episcopalian 1.5 or something, something like that. So within a nation, more uncouth, or you could say fundamentalist, are having more babies than mainline high church people. Between nations, that is also the case. Now, there's another countervailing force, which is that you bring in education, you bring in modernity, and that is coinciding with lowering birth rates. That happens all over the place. That's happening in Mexico. Yeah. So people say like, the Mexicans are going to overwhelm us. I'm not so sure. They're going through their own demographic
That's
decline.
Correct.
Iran is going through their decline.
The
only one that's
world.
not is Africa.
Well, nope. And Israel.
Oh, okay.
Israel also isn't. So Israel surprisingly has the highest birth rates out of all Western nations because they have a mass IVF program. Because they looked around and said, we're completely surrounded by people who want to kill us. So we probably should boost our numbers.
It's 2.9 in Israel.
Yeah, it's because they had a mass IVF program. And so here's what happened. Right. The patriot portion of this, the patriotic messaging, the propaganda, if the governments of these nations begin a propaganda campaign saying, you're patriotic, go have sex with your wife and give us mini babies. Right? It doesn't take that much convincing. Israel proved that it doesn't take that much convincing.
I don't disagree with this.
It's much easier, real quick. Just all they have to do, if they really wanted to boost the fertility rate in the United States, is go to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and change the algorithm to, I would say, 51% of posts on the front page are women with babies. Yeah. And then what happens is young women and young men see a mom and a dad with a kid getting millions and millions of views, and they're like, ooh, I got to do that because I don't get famous.
But government propaganda assists with this.
So much of the stuff that we're talking about right now, honestly, I think could be fixed if you did just stuff like what you're talking about. Started having society uphold family values.
Propaganda.
It's propaganda. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, like, the United States is propagandizing the American people anyways, right? All of the LGBT stuff, all that stuff is a form of propaganda, and it's not coming straight out of the government, but it's from it speaks to the zeitgeist.
I mean, it does, though. It comes from NGOs, and they're definitely moving hand in hand with government entities.
That's the propaganda. I think if a mom and a dad made Instagram videos where they were having kids and the algorithms were promoting that, I don't see that as propaganda.
Fine.
But let me give you an example. It has been known for a long time that if you go on Facebook and write getting married or having a kid, it will show your post to everyone on your friends list. So what people were doing for a while was they would put, OMG, I'm having a baby. Okay, now that I've got your attention, we're doing a big party this Friday night. If you want to come, send me a message. Because people are more likely to interact with marriage and baby news, the algorithm promotes those words and posts. It wasn't an intentional propagandistic thing. It was an algorithmic thing that naturally occurred, and people started exploiting. But my point ultimately is saying something that is true and good. I don't want to call it propaganda, whether you do or not. Like someone being like, I have a baby and I'm so happy. This is so awesome. is different from being like, we need to eat the rich and having a company inject that message.
Yeah, no, I understand you're saying propaganda has a negative connotation. I get it. But I think for the purpose of the conversation we're having, when we're saying propaganda, we're not saying it's negative, positive. We're just saying what we're talking about realistically is brainwashing. How do we assist in brainwashing, right?
The point is just instead of showing alternative lifestyles as the goal or the highest value in the country, show traditional lifestyles. That's
right.
That's all and it does, and whether it doesn't matter if it's Catholics or Episcopalians or Orthodox or whatever, it doesn't matter at all. Just show families in like acting
because
like
women are
family
so
value
propagandized. That's the best thing.
Can be. I got an idea. Can we do an award ceremony for the biggest families? And it's like the Grammys where we bring people out and it's like...
She has 38 kids.
I think you win $1 million.
Yeah, here you go.
I think a certain controversial regime did that, in fact.
Who did?
A certain 20th century controversial regimes did things like this. But that would actually sort of include the Soviet Union in that list. So people have done this. Okay, so I agree with you in this religious...
I mean, they also use toilet paper. So are you not going to use toilet paper? I mean,
we're in vehement agreement. We're in vehement agreement. They also ban smoking. But anyway... what was that program?
Unless you're in a war,
baby making program that produced ABBA. That's people.
Eurovision?
No.
Well, I was like, what?
When Hitler created Eurovision.
No.
I'm forgetting the name of it at the moment, but it was a way for single mothers to get support.
Is it ABBA?
They actually produced ABBA out of that. It's
what?
a little known fact. Yes. Anyway, look it up. What was I saying? Okay.
Did you just use the look it up? Look that shit up.
So there was a... someone's going to say the term, and I'm going to remember it. My brain is racked by COVID or whatever. So there is the religious shall have more children and so on. I agree with that. There's also this massively secular global trend of declining fertility with the institution of modern medicine, technology, education for women,
Industrialization.
Industrialization. Et cetera. So it's like, how are these things going to interact? I could make, and I'm not sure where I come down on this, but I could argue that even if all of these evangelicals have a bunch of kids, these kids are still going to turn into liberals in a few generations, because there's the technological component, but there's also that deep spiritual component, which isn't really being questioned. Are evangelicals, and I'm just positing this because I don't know exactly where I fall in this, but are evangelicals kind of baby making factories for future liberals?
I mean,
it's worth questioning.
They're going to be the only ones who are having the babies to make the future liberals.
I know.
Now, is the ideology...
You don't just pump out a baby fully grown to an evangelical Christian.
No, I get it. I'm just saying that is the ideology of progressivism going to go away? Because...
Right.
No, the answer is no, it's not going to, but it can be greatly curtailed. And the way that it can be greatly curtailed is it's just a numbers game. Ultimately, it comes into a numbers game. Progressives whittle themselves off because they become nihilists. If you tell men, look, you can go have all the sex you want without any of the reproductive responsibilities of that, and tell women the same thing, and say there's no God, there's none of this, what possible incentive do they have to have children if they can just go live their, their 2-income job and do whatever the hell they want, go on vacation every 6 months? Nihilism, man, that seems like it's a really good, alluring life when you're young. And then by the time you find out it's not, you're too fucking old to have kids.
There was those viral videos where they're like, I just want to point out, I really hate the videos where people go, we're X, we do this.
Yeah.
Just get out of here with that. But fine, whatever makes you happy.
Antinatalists.
Right, but they did the one where it's like, we're dinks.
Oh, God.
We're dinks. We do this. We go on vacation. We do whatever I want. And I'm like, we just need someone to make one where it's like 2 elderly people saying we're dinks, and they're just lamenting their loneliness.
Yeah.
Or actually, better yet, it's an elderly woman saying, "I was a dink. My husband died. I have no family, and I'm terrified that I'll die alone." And just make some of those.
Consuela comes in and moves my leg and wipes my ass.
I was at a coffee shop in Boston just the other day, and this woman, I was working on this book that I'm finishing up, and I was like copy editing and stuff like that.
That was a well done book plug, by the way. Like a real kind of like foreshadowing there. But anyway, go ahead.
It's an integrated advertisement. It's called The Birth of Tragedy by Mark Brahman and myself out this summer. But she came up to me, and I have a lot of sympathy for her because she is what that is. She wanted to talk, and she talked to me for an hour. She kind of took over my space and
But she recognized you?
She didn't recognize me, no. And I was even dropping hints, and she still didn't get it. But there are a lot of people. She was
egomaniac. What an egomaniac! You got to recognize.
Guys, Richard Spencer's an egomaniac. Like, yeah, breaking news. Yeah. But I was moved by it because she was, living her life. She has no one to talk to, and her parents are dead. She has some friends in the community. She's a very nice woman. She's definitely a liberal and a progressive, but a very nice woman, very, very upstanding woman. And for like the rest of the day, I was actually filled with a lot of sadness. It's a real thing. I mean, I'm deeply grateful for my children.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, but the thing is you can see the counterpoint now. And the counter tipping in Japan, especially, you have the elder population so far outpacing the youth being born that they're not even going to be able to take care of them soon. They're going to have to open up hundreds of thousands of work visas to foreigners to come in, hopefully to take care of their old people because they can't do it themselves. They also, the old suck up tons of resources. The young are the one who are providing them.
Right.
So you need to have a lot of young people to take care of an aging population anyway.
But then when they look
at the numbers, they're saying, hang on, they're saying that there's not going to be a South Korea in 100 years.
Yeah,
it's not going to be there.
Their birth rate is 0.8.
Yeah, it's 0.8. Yeah, so what happens when it's 0.2?
Right now, we went over this a couple nights ago. To maintain Social Security, you need 2.8 workers to pay for one recipient.
Makes sense.
Birth in the United States is at 1.8, I believe.
And dropping.
It's higher among, I actually just pulled this up. It's higher among religious groups, obviously.
Yep.
But I don't know that conservative Protestants are at 1.8. Let's see. Catholics and Protestants in general have about 2. So they're the only balanced demographic, I believe, in the U.S. Actually, it might be higher among Muslims. It might be a couple points. All that really matters with the fertility rate being under 2.8, we are about a generation or 2 away from, first and foremost, Social Security is already collapsing by 2023. It starts breaking down. By 2037, they're expecting it to totally collapse. They'll probably try pulling off some kind of major fiat move in an effort to maintain the system.
Quantitative easing.
But here's the
Social Security.
But here's the issue. You can print all the money in the world that you want. If you don't have the labor that money buys, that money is toilet paper. And so without the fertility rate,
we don't have the human capital.
And so what they'll do is they will give their $1,000 check to a Social Security recipient who will then walk outside and say, I'm old and I need my butt wiped and I have no kids. Can I pay someone to do it? And there will be no one there. A tumbleweed will roll by. And they'll say, well, what good is this money? There's no one to do the labor.
Right.
So what can they do?
Well, I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're going to bank on it, mass migration.
Yes.
And this is, if you even read the modern papers from NGOs, these NGOs they see that this is an issue. They've foreseen this going to be an issue for a while. Now that we're in the issue, they're going to bank on mass migration, especially from African nations, which are some of the only ones that have a birth rate, which is raising. They're gonna, and that's why you see so many African migrants coming in now. As Mexico's birth rate decreases because they are fast becoming a much more industrialized first world nation, right? It's decreasing. All South American nations' birth rates are decreasing. How are you going to pull from them when they don't have the human capital either? But they're gonna focus on African migrants.
This is the problem of the current administration, and I don't just mean the Biden administration, but the political powers in the United States. The presumption that just bring in as many as you can to bolster the tax base and create kids for the next generation. The problem is they, as managers of that system, will not last with it. So if you bring in people who don't know how to run a machine like this, simply because they will do the jobs that you can then tax to pay for the older generation, you will still have an older generation that requires more people. Eventually, you will not, once again, have enough people because fertility is still going to be low. And then there will be no one left to take over and inherit your machine unless you actually segment yourself and your family and your kids and your community away from the machine you built.
Yeah, well, this is actually a good segue because we also have a golden opportunity to make our country extremely powerful if we're some of the first to the forefront in getting the birth rate back up, especially through propaganda. I mean, the whole world's about to suffer from this. If you can imagine if we were one of the few nations on planet Earth in the West that had a birth rate as high as what Israel's is, we'd have a massive advantage in human capital, having a homogenous nation. Our inventiveness would be through the roof. Everything going forward would be better if we did that. That should be a number one policy. Nobody's even talking about it. A couple of people in Congress are kind of making mentions about it. That's it. So yeah, I think that's going to be one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, but it doesn't solve.
Even in my lifetime.
I think I don't disagree with so much of what you're saying, but it doesn't solve this issue of this radical natalism that is at least suggested by someone.
What the hell is radical natalism?
Well, just go with it. Don't let's not get caught up on this.
Yeah, I just want to know what it is. What is it?
Have tons of kids. We'll soon be in the stars. That we need, 7 billion more, etc. We're going to start declining from 8 billion coming up
quickly.
Yeah. But if you're just saying have more children, that sounds like you're going to fill up more and more favelas. To be honest, like it doesn't follow that there's simply more people out there like who breathe oxygen and are, big-brained apes, mammals, and you're going to therefore reach the stars. I could easily argue that
but I'm not making
promoting fertility around the issue also
right now I'm talking about populating this planet. I'm not even talking about the stars.
I know, but promoting fertility is going to create a colossal global underclass. And you're not going to outbreed them. Even evangelicals.
Wait. Hang on. So what? That's scalable. So not breeding, you're still going to have a colossal underclass. It's a scalability thing. Yes, more people in the underclass. I guess that's tangentially true, but so what? Doesn't matter. Ultimately, that doesn't matter. You need to have logistics. Yeah, but you need to have people running ships, and you need to have them driving trucks, and you need to have them doing this.
Advance us towards the stars or something. I mean, we need to understand, like, we're going to have to manage the world. I'm not
talking about bringing up the birth rates of people who have sustainable birth rates.
I understand. I'm just pointing out there's just outright natalism brings its own issues. But you were going to say something.
Well, I mean, I guess in a bizarre way, but here's the thing. It really, the main thing is that pronatalism brings about, a human species that I think we need in order to have any of these other tangential kind of issues sorted out. And right now, the anti-natalists have been winning. They dropped the population bomb all over the world. They said that there was going to be a catastrophe when we reached 8 billion people. The opposite happened. More food than ever, more logistics, more food getting everywhere.
Centers. I mean, there weren't that many people in, London or England itself.
They weren't dropping it there.
Hold on, just let me finish, dude. Come on.
Go ahead.
There weren't that many people in England, and within 2 or 3 generations, you had Shakespeare and Milton and Newton, coming down the pike. These small nations, if you look at what England and Germany in particular and other cultures have contributed towards human advancement and so on, it is off the charts. So it's not a matter of numbers. It fundamentally is a matter of a people and a culture who is able to advance.
Don't you think? Don't you think Newton needs to eat? Don't you think these people? Well, so this is the thing, right? All of these kind of components which go into the advancement of technology that you're talking about is a massive logistical order, huge scale. And the thing that's so interesting about it is absent the kind of human capital necessary for the massive amount of freighters that are required and the equipment for these mines and all of this type of thing. If you scale that down, we're going to go back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, where we did have real hunger problems, global hunger problems, which have essentially all but been solved. And it's not because the microchip has solved them. It's because humanity, having human capital, has assisted in growing more food than we've ever been able to grow before, ever.
Right. But a planet with 1 billion people, the right billion people, could absolutely go interstellar. And I think much like the wall or other things, I think this nativism thing is a sort of kind of red herring of the real issue. The real issue is that master narratives have broken down. The real issue is that we're creating a massive underclass population globally that is being fed, that is not starving. But is that sustainable or is that desirable? I mean, wouldn't you like to go to the African continent and it's free? Like there are animals everywhere. It's dangerous. In fact, it's a truly undiscovered place. Isn't there some deep spiritual need we have for nature? Don't you want North America
I don't think
to have wild places on it?
I don't think that we need to.
We don't need
contract all of humanity so that you feel better about going to Africa and being scared by a lion, right? That seems.
We might need to do that.
Not only does that seem silly, but I also don't think that contracting the amount of minds which we can create down to the perfect 1 billion or 500 million. That's what the Georgia Guidestones say, right? Yeah. Get it down to 500 million.
Right.
Get the class down to 500 million. Keep it in perpetuity with nature. The exact same thing you are currently now
I love
advocating.
the Georgia Guidestones.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
But that's some mass globalist, anti-natalist Satanism. Yeah. That's what it is.
I mean, I'm not so sure about the Satanism.
Well,
part,
I'm pretty sure that an anti-natalist policy in and of itself requires abortion. It requires prophylactic, contraception. It requires all of this. It's a pretty satanic agenda, I must admit. An anti-natalist agenda, to me, is satanic. No two ways about it.
There is a carrying capacity of the planet. I mean, would you not admit this? I mean,
I don't think that
even if we haven't
reached
it,
what that is, and we're not the problem. We're not facing the problem right now of what happens if we go to wherever this arbitrary capacity that you have no idea what it is. We're facing the opposite problem. And we know what that looks like.
Right, but that is a huge problem. I mean, think about Gen Z as a sort of kind of like terminal generation. So I am used to hearing stories about what's wrong with the kids these days. The 60s kids, the boomers, shocked their parents in terms of their free love and all sorts of other things. They were having more sex. I remember when I was growing up, it was all about teen pregnancy. What's going on with teenagers? They're doing drugs, they're having sex, they're pregnant, et cetera, et cetera. Now the issue is fundamentally different. It is these Zoomers are
nihilists.
Almost pushing towards the end. There wasn't even a baby boom during COVID. We were literally, like you talk about propaganda, people were literally trapped in a confined space and they didn't have sex.
You have to be trapped in a confined space with a woman to have sex with her, though. And that's the disconnect, right? The nihilism, which is leading to everything from incels to not wanting to have a relationship until you're in your 30s, until you feel like you're set, right? So people in their 20s, that's the fertility years. They're not even bothering.
Let me. Right? I pulled up Google Maps, and this really fascinated me a long time ago when I was looking at it. And you can see all this beautiful lush green and the mountains and all that stuff. Yeah. The fascinating thing about this is this strip right here, Appalachia. Yeah, it's dark green. Those are trees. When you zoom in, what do you find? You find mountains. It's not really great farming territory. The reason West Virginia is an East Coast state but is sparsely populated is because the mountains were too difficult for people to move through. Yeah. Now, if you move over here, here's a fascinating thing. All of the light green, all of it is farms.
Right. Yep.
That is, to me, insane. I didn't realize just how much. And look, we zoom in. All farms.
Yes.
Absolutely ridiculous. It's all farming.
Yeah, we're a mass exporter of food.
And that is absolutely crazy to me. I believe that based on, for the United States at the very least, we are high up on how much land we're using for farming. That being said, we have fat homeless people. So I don't know that the I'm not suggesting this means we're close to the upper limit. I think it means more so we have a cultural imbalance in that we produce tremendous resources, and then we have people who don't utilize them properly. So the waste of the energy produced is massive.
Well, I think that the homeless people are getting fat on chocolate bars and Cheez-Its, not on ears of corn and tomatoes grown.
They are getting fat on ears of corn. Actually, that corn syrup is.
Well, no, you get my point.
I get your point,
right? And corn syrup, heavy in sugar, all this type of thing. But what I'm saying is, they're not getting fat on tomatoes grown in the Midwest. They're not getting fat on the crops in the Midwest. Most of the United States is uninhabited. Most of it. And that's going to remain the case for the foreseeable future.
But that's not uninhabited has nothing to do with whether or not we're at population sustainable levels, right?
It does because of water. It's a water thing. So most major cities, metropolitans are built around water because pumping water initially was not an easy thing to do. That's why people settle where there's water, and that's why they always did.
It's not just that every human needs 100 feet of land or something. It's like we have it's gone now. But we have a massive system of agricultural production. You can't just things are going to radically change if you put 1 billion people in the center of the country like that. Like, you cannot have those farms anymore, and so on. So if there's 10 million more people in Phoenix, Arizona, is that even possible? Or are you going to have massive water shortages just due to geography and climate?
Yeah, but
so there are limits to these things.
I get it. But what happens is this instead, and let's take China, because I have a great example that I can kind of give you. Mm-hmm. What happens is Beijing. What happens is the cities, which are on waters, they grow to 500 million people in a single city. They don't all move out to the middle of the countryside where the farmland is.
Horrible. Why would we want
I think
that?
It is horrible, but it's the thing.
That's the direct consequence of what you're saying.
No. The consequence of me saying let's at least sustain what we have. At least sustain what we have is not a consequence of, now there's 50 billion people on planet Earth, and there's cities in the United States with 10 billion people.
Real quick, there's about 900 million acres of farmland in the United States, estimate. It's about 1 to 2 acres to feed one person. So very simple numbers. 450 million is the very, very simple estimate of upper limit of U.S. population, for which we're at 330.
Right. Yeah, this is all fair because there is a sort of carrying capacity, and it's not purely geographic.
But real quick, I want to make this point.
Okay. Carrying
capacity will change dramatically based on how we structure society. The sort of liberal machine right now, I hate using the word liberal, but the whatever you want to call it, establishment, is put everybody in cities. Biggest mistake you can make.
Yeah.
The example I like to give is if you take 10 chickens and you let them loose in a big field, they will walk around that field pooping, and the grass will grow greener.
Right.
Thomas Massey has the flux capacitor, he calls it, where it pulls the chicken coop very slowly. So it spreads the chicken poop out, and then there's a big trail of lush green grass. But what do you think would happen if you put those chickens in one small area? Within a day, there's no grass left, and the amount of feces has piled up to such a degree, it is toxic. The chickens are getting sick from it. It smells horrible, and the rain can't dissipate it.
Right.
That's New York City. New York, LA, we have hyper-concentrated all of our waste products, so it cannot effectively be dissipated into the environment in positive ways. So it's not so much about overpopulation, but hyper-concentration of population is extremely destructive.
I agree. The suburbs are also very ineffective.
But I'm not sure though what that would have to do with a pro-natalist policy.
No, hold on,
exactly.
We got to have lots of babies and spread them out.
Yeah, sure. This is my argument. Look, I'm gonna give you a charitable interpretation of what you're saying because I think
you can make it uncharitable.
Well, hold on, no, because I think some cases, Andrew, I think you're almost like trying to disagree with me so that we can get more fireworks or whatever. And
I didn't come to a debate to be your buddy.
I understand. I didn't come here to make friends.
I didn't come here to make friends. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So what you're saying basically is you want to maintain America as it is with family homes, kids in the playgrounds, playing baseball.
Well, I would like to see at least the kids in the playground thing.
Exactly. Right.
I haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah. That's what you want, right? There is, and I totally resonate with that as well. There is an overwhelming secular urge, and it's extremely intense among Zoomers towards anti-fertility.
Yeah, no.
And so I guess what I'm saying is I understand that. I love that too. But might there be a silver lining towards the sort of bottleneck that we're all experiencing? Because what we're breeding, it's not just religion. We're also breeding sort of antisocial behavior to some degree. And that's actually, an equivocal matter.
Yeah, but how would you become more social with less people?
Because it's the people who are passing the shit test who are having sex. Now, that could be a multimillionaire who has a great home and 4 kids, Gavin Newsom style kind of thing.
I think it's just hypergamy.
Or it could be a lot of, to be brutally frank here, a lot of kind of dumb people who don't give a fuck. They don't have enough foresight to put on a condom, etc. They're just kind of producing this, and there's a tremendous amount of social dysfunction involved in the people of high birth rates. It's actually the middle. The top, say, 2 to 9% are reproducing themselves. The bottom, like 40%, are also reproducing themselves. It's the middle that is, those dinks are middle class.
The top percentage also not reproducing much.
They actually are.
Not much.
I know, but they are reproducing themselves a
little bit more.
If you're super wealthy and stuff like that, you are likely to have children. The bottom are reproducing themselves, and it's actually dysfunctional. And we also have this kind of issue of the Zoomers not even having sex, the amount of virgins that we have. So we're in this bottleneck. Only a few people are going to survive. Are you just badass enough that your genes are going to go on? Are you the guy who has tattoos and a leather jacket or like heavy metal band, kind of that chicks love it because you're a fucking alpha. You're a badass. They want your babies, whether they're going to admit that to themselves or not. Those people are going to survive. People who are highly intelligent and functional are going to survive. There is going to be a bottleneck. We are experiencing that.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is
hypothetical. You're talking about social eugenics.
Well, it's not like a program. It's just happening. This is where we are.
That's why I didn't say it was a program, but in a way, social eugenics is, if it's being postulated, socially, if we're going to do, isn't there really kind of this silver lining that kind of the ADHD people and some of the people who are antisocial are just going to kind of, I don't know, wink out of existence, and that they're not going to have children, and that's good, because then we have kind of this master, all the people who survive, the kind of master racish, right? That's kind of what you're moving towards, right? Social eugenics, right? Yes.
Might there be some silver linings to that?
I don't think that's a silver lining. I don't think that just because you are antinatalist and you create even what you would consider to be some type of social paradise, I don't think it's a paradise. I think that all you're going to end up doing is creating a population of more starvation and of more suffering. I think you need to have the human capital available to support even 1 billion people. The logistics between nations is insane. Have you ever looked at it? It's insane. I don't even know how it's done. It's so complex. I think people who
ships going all over
not just ships and airplanes and freighters and everything going between everywhere. You have to have the human capital, and you have to have the human capital to get into the mines and get out the gold and get out these different resources. Even refining those resources and recycling them take human capital. It's not scalable. The reason it's not scalable is because you don't increase labor by double by having 2 people. You increase it 4 times, 5 times, just by having a second person. So yes, labor multiplied by people, we need it, and we need it in a big way. I don't know that going back to not 1 billion people, 900 million, is necessarily going to make for this kind of utopia. I don't think it will.
It's cultural. It's if you had 100,000 individuals that were born into this culture of like Spartan-esque warrior and scientific values, you'd probably become a spacefaring nation very quickly, as opposed to 1 billion people who just want to eat Cheez-Its and,
exactly. There are 1 billion Africans. Are they getting more productive? I mean, it's about quality and not quantity.
I'm not saying that.
I will say, though. I'm not
saying that there's no cultural
I think
prism.
that is, we're going to get into the race thing, but I think that's an overgeneralization.
But that's really weird, because Nairobi,
for instance, actually has a tremendous technological Research Hub.
Well, not only that, but why? What I don't get about this is like, sure, okay, there's a cultural prism. If you had 100,000 Spartans, right, they're going to do way better than 100 million Africans or something. Fine, I'll concede that. But why wouldn't 500,000 Spartans do better? That is what I don't understand.
We
or 1 million Spartans do better.
You live on this planet, and you can't just pick and choose. Like, I could argue that you're saying the productivity argument, if you have 4, that's not 4 times better. It's like 16.
Yeah, it's like 24 times better.
I'll grant it to you. I could also say with dysfunctional people, it's like 16 times worse. Like,
no. Well, dysfunctional, it depends on the type of dysfunction. But the thing is, for basic labor, you don't need to have. Here's the other thing that people always forget: people with really high IQs, they're fucking dysfunctional.
I agree.
They are super dysfunctional. They have tons of mental illness. They have tons of
they want to be a poet.
This is actually true. A direct correlation: the higher the IQ, the more likely they're mentally ill.
Yeah, they suffer from massive depression, and the chances are it's going to be genetic to their children. They're spreading the type of social unease you're talking about with ADHD and depression and this type of thing. Why don't you start with the high IQ people? I have it worse than anyone.
The be all end all is wrong. It's
absolutely
straight up wrong.
There's this really funny meme of income by IQ chart, and it shows IQ, or income is on the left and IQ is on the bottom, and it slowly goes up. The higher the IQ, the higher the income. But there's one person with an IQ at 75 who makes the highest. It's like 1.4 million per year, and people are like, damn, I gotta figure out what that is. And it's like, well, he's a professional athlete. I'm not trying to be a dick to professional athletes.
Right.
But you got a really dumb guy who can triple backflip, and he's slamming every dunk, and he's making every touchdown pass.
Yeah.
I mean, you can become successful, powerful, wealthy, and IQ doesn't guarantee that. Persistence does. But ultimately, though, I think the issue is, for me, I don't care about where you're from, what you do. It's about productivity. Yeah. So, you mentioned Africa, for instance. It's managerial power. Mm-hmm. So you need people who can carry bricks. You need people who can solve math. I don't care where that comes from or who can do it. What your background is, just do the job. So in the United States, the problem we have is people have brought this point up in China. They ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? They say astronaut. You ask an American kid, they say influencer. Mm-hmm. Influencers don't do anything. Like what am I doing? I complain on the internet for a living? Heavens help me. We need. I've longed for this since I was a kid. We need a society that champions astronauts, engineers. I'm glad Elon Musk has become as popular as he has been as a celebrity for being an industrialist, because the idea needs to be, as we're talking about TikTok algorithms promoting family, if we had award ceremonies and national television show, major, the Emmys was more about technological advancement, scientific advancement, or labor achievement, that's what people would look up to and want to be, because at the root for most people, they're just trying to figure out how to be accepted.
Yeah.
So if some little kid is like, I want people to clap for me, it's like, well, here's how you do it. You build a spaceship. Then they're going to be like, I want to do that.
Yeah. But the thing that's interesting is blue collar is making its way back in. It's becoming a thing which is trendy to move towards again.
But this is what I mean. Like, we should have an award ceremony for the dude who laid the most bricks in a building.
Yeah.
And I'm somewhat kidding, but having some dude come in who's like just a dad wearing a...
I mean, why kid? That sounds like a perfectly virtuous undertaking to be like, you've laid more bricks than anybody else in the entire world. That's awesome.
We should have competitions, like construction competitions and things like that, where, I like sports. I like watching.
You know why you can't do that? Because he doesn't include women. Right?
You can include. You can have the women's construction.
Can't. If it's not inclusive to women in a trade,
make a women's division.
You can't glorify it in any way.
That's a massive.
There's just not enough women who are construction workers and have jackhammers.
My point is, perhaps it's because people don't want to think about work. It's like, dude, I did it all day. Now I kind of want to do something else. So we have hobbies, and you like watching sports on TV because it's just like, let me relax. I love construction. I'm the best at it. I can talk you around a building all day and night. But after I'm done with it, I want to zone out and relax to recharge my batteries. That's probably why people like watching other things. But I'm just saying, in general, if our society from the ground up was promoting hyper-productivity, then we'd be spacefaring, right? It's a society that neglects its youth, and this is what the United States does, that produces degeneracy. The example I'll give you is... It's always quite shocking to me growing up. The most important formative years of a human being's life, and this is scientifically proven, is 0 through 5. the development of neural pathways in the brain exponentially larger and diminish after that age. And so a baby from 0 to 5, their brain is rapidly developing and creating the pathways which will allow them to function, calculate, think, solve problems.
That's why malnourishment in a child is so awful.
But what's fascinating is when they have discovered children who are chained in basements by evil predators or who were neglected, they can never learn to speak properly. The famous story is like the little girl who was found like chained up in a basement. She was 14 and 15. By the time she was in her 20s, even with as much education as they gave her, she could not speak English.
Wow.
She could only grunt. She could say hungry, tired, but she couldn't articulate complex thoughts because the neural pathways never developed.
Right. She's an influencer now.
That's right. One of the most famous. But in American society, we completely ignore 0 through 5. Completely. That's a time period where today parents are sticking an iPad in front of the baby and pressing play and leaving the room.
Yeah.
That is this is going to gum up the brains of the next
Borderline
generation.
child abuse.
Or just outright societal failure child abuse. So if you took every kid in this country and instead of playing some weird video of a guy singing, dude, let me tell you a story, man. And I'm not trying to be mean to my friend here, but you know, his kid's watching some show and it's this weird guy. I turned it off. I couldn't help. He was going, and I'm like, why is this kid watching this?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I put on David Attenborough talking about frogs. And he was like, the poison dart frog takes his child, the tadpole, and finds a small place to keep. And I'm like, and I'm going, wow. And the kid all of a sudden is like, oh, like watching.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is what we're doing in the modern age. If instead we were playing, and this has got to be BBC documentaries, play a video of someone playing chess. People, I really can't stand how they say that kids are dumb. They're like, kids are too stupid and they don't listen.
Yeah.
No. The mental capacity of a child, the potential is nigh infinite. I mean that figuratively. But because the data has not been installed into the machine, you assume it's incapable. That's like buying a brand new high-end gaming computer desktop for 10 grand and then being like, it sucks, it doesn't do anything. It's like, well, did you install any games on it?
Is it worse though to put the iPad in front of them than Sesame Street?
I think they're all bad.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is that all through the 80s and 90s,
terrible.
They also were putting them in front of the TV for, Saturday morning cartoons or this or that or, any number of different things.
All bad.
But most of those people still don't seem to be nearly as fucked up as the Zoomers are, even though they were put in front of this, right?
It's all bad and it's continually getting worse. Children used to be raised alongside their parents. The 2-year-old son was walking around the dad's carpentry shop, watching him and garbling.
Now I think that it's what's being interpreted also, which is the big problem. That's why I think that if you're watching Sesame Street, right now, as bad as Sesame Street is, I think it gave you different values than what you're talking about here. Nom, 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 right? So if the TV is raising you, maybe at least it's raising you with an idea of something that's not whatever that is. But I agree with you that
hundreds of millions of
the interpretation of how children do things, walking through the shop with dad, going out with their parents, seeing mom and dad love each other, things like that.
Playing
yes, that's huge.
Yes.
T-ball.
But the interpretation,
all of that's just as important, in fact.
Yeah, it's all absorbed.
The Zoomers are like, we're terrified of going outside. It's not even they're terrified of women or having sex or whatever. They're terrified of like leaving their home.
And it's crazy too because people don't realize this. The media will insult incels all day and night, but women are in the same boat.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say the identical boat, in very similar position as young men. There was a viral video where a 20-something-year-old attractive woman was saying like, haha, I have no friends and I've never dated a guy before and haha, I don't know what to do and haha, all these guys think I have it made. Very socially awkward, weird, but attractive. And I'm like, kind of wild. If she just went out and partied with friends at a bar, she'd meet a guy.
Sure.
Yeah.
But they're
antisocial.
Yeah, exactly. They're locked in this internet realm. I hate all children's content. I think it is all bad, all of it. I like the Daily Wire. I love what they're doing with Bent Key because it's a reversal from where we're at.
Was G.I. Joe that bad?
G.I. Joe's okay, actually.
Yeah, G.I. Joe's all right.
I don't like. I really don't like anthropomorphized children's animal shows.
Yeah, like Bambi.
I don't like, so like, I'm going to call it the Daily Wire specifically, but though with respect, there's other people who can call it, that's worse. Like Chip Chilla. You know, they're doing a kids where it's like what is it? A chinchilla family. And I'm like, don't give kids anthropomorphized animals to identify with. Give them humans doing real things.
Yeah.
But I understand why they're doing it. So with all due respect, I think this is really this kind of thing. It's a cascade failure where one beleaguered generation will produce an even more beleaguered generation, and it will continually decline. Perhaps, however, this is the natural flow of its natural selection.
We can turn it around, and here I think we'll have broad agreement. So much of American society is kind of letting technology happen or something. It's like, oh wow, at one point we had books and now we have iPads and we have it's just this liberalism of kind of hands off of social development. At one time we were men and women in a family. Now we're gays, and so they're conservatives. And I say this as someone who's outside of their realm. You ultimately have to assert your will on the world, in order to transform it. You can't just say, just leave me alone, I'm okay, and so on. You need to say, no, we're actually, and I'm not necessarily supporting this, but let's ban iPads. You can't own a television until you're 18 or something like that, hypothetically speaking. And we have compulsory athletics. You must participate. You must socialize.
Well, one of the biggest problems that conservatives ran into, is they fell into the libertarian movement too much. Yeah. And conservatives forgot, Christian conservatives forgot, that if secularists are allowed to wield power, so are you. It's okay for you, and secularists will say this all the time.
Secularists aren't actually secularists. It's just a weird new religion.
I agree, but what they're saying is they're like, if you're a Christian and Christianity is what informs your value, you can't rule like that.
Right.
That you're not allowed to rule if that's the case. Yes, you are, and you should, and we need that more than anything. And so this was a huge con job, from my perspective, how many conservatives went over to libertarianism, and they really shouldn't have, because it convinced them not to seize what you're talking about, which is power. We have a right to move towards power. When you're talking about Christian populism, Christian nationalism, the reason it's becoming popular is because the people who are promoting it are saying the one thing that we've forgotten for a long time. It's okay for you as a Christian to wield power. Even absolute power, just like it is for the secularists.
This is what I absolutely cannot stand, is like the left is right now screaming, liberals, I should say, are screaming, if Donald Trump gets elected, he's going to come after his political enemies. And I'm like, that's what you're doing.
That's right.
And then conservatives are like, no, we won't. We swear. That's not what we want to do. And I'm like, who cares?
Yes, it is.
I don't care what
That's exactly what I want to do.
I don't care what they think anymore. I'm like, I said this a couple years ago, when you come to me and say, oh, you can't say that because these liberals are sex. I'm like, that's France. That's like coming to me and being like, your stance on immigration is wrong because you're going to lose the people over here. They don't like what you're saying. And I'm like, why do I care what France is doing? Mm-hmm. I am not France. I do not participate in their elections. They operate independent of themselves, and they try to exert authority over internationally as any nation would do. When you come to me and talk about New York and how liberals are complaining about stuff, I'm like, why do you care what New York liberals think? That's like arguing. We are so separate at this point. All that matters is you recognize the power systems as they are, how to win elections, and how to wield the power you've gotten to defend your values and make this country a better place.
Well, you make a good point with this, and I've seen this a lot, the kind of liberal media tour on if Donald Trump is elected, he's going to go for revenge. And you kind of brought this up just a second ago. The reason that's such a good point is because you're also right. The entire fiasco going on with Trump right now, his prosecution, that's all revenge.
Right.
100% that's revenge. There's no doubt that that's revenge. When that election, or when the verdict was read, the entire internet went crazy with leftists going, that's right, next is the orange jumpsuit. We're going to get you, and you MAGA people are next. It's total revenge. But for some reason, the idea that if Trump gets elected, he's going to come in and clean house with your ass next, that's unacceptable. What's sad to me, though, is that conservatives of all stripes fall for this shit time and time again and go, no, we're going to be better than you. What?
Right.
What?
Don't you think, and I'll try to kind of bring this full circle to where we began. I have this idea of the last election. And this goes back to my support of Joe Biden. He's a geriatric manager of a declining empire, right? And so he's
drinking his Ensure, and he's managed.
Even Clinton was, I think he was in his 40s when he was elected. He was kind of young and vital and so on. Now we have this old man running. It really reminds me of the Soviet Union, in fact, of a Brezhnev area where we're having these premiers die, and the next one is comatose and et cetera. It reminds me of where we are in terms of the liberal managers. But don't you think this is the last election in the sense that it's hard to see beyond it? It's hard to imagine someone replacing Trump. I think even the DeSantis failure was an expression of that. But also, regardless of which way the election goes, the other side can't accept it. Because the liberals have criminalized Trump in some ways for legitimate reasons, I should say, but I'll put that aside for the moment. They've criminalized Trump. How could you let him win? How could you hand the keys to the Ferrari over to this man who you've declared has stolen documents?
Well, they're not going to.
And secondly, J6, and we don't have to go into all this stuff about J6 or whatever, but it's like that was clearly an expression of outrage, of just, no, we will not let this happen. We're going in there. They said it themselves. It's a revolution, baby. And so where does, I feel like we've reached an endpoint in 2024 where I can't see over the horizon and there's nothing after.
I completely agree.
Don't you think that that's kind of a terminal take? So if you look especially a terminally online take, if you look at what the average Americans are thinking when they're looking at this, I think that they can. I think that they can see a future past Trump and Biden. I think that if they just have a normal run-of-the-mill liberal, kind of presidency next time, they'll be fine with that. They'll be fine with other progressives like Clinton coming in. I think they'll be fine with that.
But
it's on the Republican conservative side, I think, that we're having the trouble seeing past the populist. We're having trouble seeing past how do we get back to anything that's not Trump-like, anything that's not that kind of social Molotov cocktail or hand grenade thrown in to wreck the establishment. I don't think the progressive left gives a shit. I think they're fine, like you said, with moving the status quo towards progressivism.
Right.
And so the next liberal to them is meaningless.
But it was those terminally online people who got into QAnon, and a large percentage of them went to J6. Like the intense minority.
I don't think most of them.
Well, hold on.
Tiny percentage, maybe.
The principle is here, an intense minority determines the future. It's not the broad masses that start saying, let's revolt against England or whatever. It's actually intense, interested minorities and intense, interested elites that create history. You don't have to be elite to create history. I think that's wrong. But it's those small percentages that change things. And those small percentages have been activated to a point where this is it, baby. Like
I agree.
But only on one side. I think that the demographic you're talking about still is very, very, very small. So I understand you say an intense minority. I get it, right? But I think this is purely on the right. We cannot see a way past somebody like Trump. That's why, like Ramaswamy, that I think that he's somebody people could have gotten into maybe a little bit. No way he was ever going to get the nomination. But he was trying to say kind of more mainstream dissident right-wing talking points rather than normal right-wing talking points. And so this is where the right is moving. They're moving that way.
Visit left-wing forums and watch left-wing commentators. They're saying the exact same thing as the right.
Interesting.
Donald Trump is the end of this country. He will destroy democracy. He will start imprisoning people. He's a fascist. It's the end. They're all commenting the same things. The tree of liberty. Like, it's fascinating to me. You get these Republicans saying, like, the tree of liberty comment. The left is saying identical things. I've dug through these various subreddit forums, watched many of their videos. They're all talking about the Vaush pro-gun. 100%. He's talking about how the left needs to start learning how to use arms. The John Brown Gun Club, the Red Guard. You've got various factions of far left groups that are training, that are armed. There's videos out of Portland where you'll see like an old white guy with a big white beard, body armor with a bunch of different magazines on it, rifles hanging from his chest with a sidearm, and then he walks up and then he's got a communist patch on his chest and he's like, what can I do for you? And if you took that communist patch off, the media would call him far right. But these are leftists that are doing this. Everyone is saying we don't know what happens after November. I have no idea. I do think the most likely outcomes will never be, and this is because people don't read history. and they're first order thinkers. They're like, you really think the states are going to fight each other? No. Like, there's no civil war because the states won't fight each other. Stop thinking that the world is like 1861, where there was a union that was beleaguered.
What is more like the IRA?
Absolutely,
right.
Yeah. And what I think might actually happen is, I don't think you'll see interstate conflict. I think what you'll see is, in 2020, Texas filed a lawsuit against Pennsylvania to the Supreme Court, citing under original jurisdiction. That is, when a state sues a state, Supreme Court hears it instantly. Supreme Court said no. Texas argued Pennsylvania was in violation of the Constitution in how they operated their election. And if they're allowed to run their elections improperly in violation of the Constitution, their votes should not impact how Texas gets to vote. Basically, hey, man, we all agreed to this system where we vote, but that guy's cheating. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, we don't care. We don't care whether they're cheating or not.
Yeah.
48 states, I think it was 48 states, got involved. Numerous states were also accused of the same thing. There was half the states filing amicus briefs on behalf of Pennsylvania, the other half on behalf of Texas, and the Supreme Court said, leave me the F out of it. If, in November, we get to a point where, now that Republicans are aware of how the Democrats played the game, with the executive branches of states changing the rules of the elections, and judges, that violates the Constitution. Only the legislative branch of the states determine how elections are run. You are going to have state legislative bodies prepared for how they're going to be delivering electoral vote counts and results to combat what the governors do. Republicans currently control the House. It doesn't mean too much, but this means that come, December, when electoral votes are being submitted, a red state, I should say a swing state with mixed government, a Democrat governor with a Republican legislature, may submit two slates of electors that are both deemed legit. Now, this actually happened in 2020, but the governors certify. So the state legislatures are saying, no, here's our actual slate. The governor says, I certified this one. And now they're trying to jail the electors that were trying to submit through the legislative bodies. The potential for catastrophe right now is insane. Maybe it doesn't happen. But there is a potential for a scenario that I believe, if it were to reach conflict, would be really, really light, really simple, terrifying though, and we don't want it to happen, in that several states have dual slates. The House then says, we can't do this. Again, we did it in 2020, and it's chaos. You're going to have state legislators giving press conferences saying, our governor is submitting false electors. Those are not our electors. We certify. The governor is going to say, no, I certify. It's going to be 2020 on steroids. The end result is not that a January 6th things happen. Texas then announces they're teaming up with Oklahoma. Sure. What happens is there will be, moving into January, a legal battle over who is going to be inaugurated. It will likely, in that instance, then defer to House delegations for choosing the president because there is a legal dispute. The House, which I believe it's something like 28 delegations are Republican, obviously are going to side with Donald Trump. Democrat states will then say, this is an illegitimate election. The people have spoken, likely citing the popular vote, and the states where they say governors certify electors. Then what happens when California says outright, we do not accept the authority of a Donald Trump administration? In 2020, the Boston Globe reported that Democrats ran a war campaign with Republicans where they said if Donald Trump were to win, they would encourage West Coast states to threaten to secede from the union unless Trump conceded on all their demands. What's to stop that scenario from happening once again, knowing many of these people fear criminal prosecution, as they've already stated? You will see Podesta, Clinton, and anyone else in the event of a Trump administration saying, okay, Trump is going to come after us, or at least he will demand, his base will demand he does, and we're going to face some serious consequences. So they go to California or Washington. Washington then says, and this is not out of the, this is really simple stuff. Federal authorities, we will not allow you into our state. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look right now at Donald Trump's charges in New York, because I've already argued this should be the case. New York filed criminal charges against Donald Trump on a bunk pretense so absurd that even CNN called it nonsense. Fareed Zakaria. Even MSNBC political analysts were like, we do not understand this. Mm-hmm. A misdemeanor charge, which is normally a slap on the wrist, altering business documents, beyond its statute of limitations, was upgraded to a felony, citing 3 potential criminal elements that were never met or proven beyond a reasonable doubt. with that subcategory that's never been proven to the public, they asserted this one crime is now a felony they can charge Trump with from New York to a resident of Florida. What should have happened is Donald Trump, because I'll tell you what I'd do, go to the governor, DeSantis, and say, when CNN comes out and calls this illegitimate, I think we have grounds to challenge this at a federal level and refuse to acknowledge this attempt. We're now learning, I think it's Missouri. Is it Missouri has filed a lawsuit against New York, challenging the lawsuits against Trump as an attempted election interference. It has begun. In this scenario, Donald Trump says publicly, I understand there's been criminal charges filed. Even CNN is calling them ridiculous. This is beyond its statute of limitations and has no legal merit, and I will not waste my money nor taxpayer dollars of any state or the federal government to answer to a clearly political charge from a man who campaigned on criminally charging me and currently hired a guy who was just working in the Biden administration. Ron DeSantis would then be met with do you allow federal authorities, marshals or otherwise, to go to Florida and physically apprehend one of its residents who is not legitimately charged under any real statutory authority? DeSantis has got a really tough decision on his hands if that's the case. Allow federal authorities to effectively kidnap the front runner for the presidency and one of your residents using external authority that you will not stop, proving yourself impotent and weak, or outright say it would be a criminal effort for federal authorities under false legal authority to come and take one of our residents, and we will not allow it.
Yeah.
It's a constitutional crisis with no answer.
Yeah, but it also seems kind of far-fetched. I mean, the stars would really have to align for this to happen, including Trump. He would have to make some pretty competent plays to make something like that
Trump
happen.
would have to actually be defiant.
Yeah, he would have to. And
every step of the way, he has bent the knee to what is clearly false.
Right.
The Georgia case now is frozen because of Fani Willis's improprieties.
But not only that, I think the more likely scenario, this is how I see it playing out. I think that Donald Trump's going to lose this election for sure. And Biden's going to get it. I think that the state will never allow Trump to go back in office no matter what. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. And I think that they'll lie, cheat, and steal if they need to make sure that he never gets back into office. I think that they're more than capable of doing that and will do it.
But I
actually think Trump's going to win.
You think so?
But your argument doesn't.
I'm not going to vote for him.
$100.
Well, yeah, dinner, just to make it friendly.
All right.
Yeah. But I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then when they do everything that they do, Republicans with experience from 2020, and I'm not talking about federal level who seem to write a lot of angry letters. I'm talking about state level guys who are a bit more aggressive, say, we've prepared for this eventuality and we've already lined up our legal documents, our legal teams, and we hereby challenge you cannot move forward, and you end up with a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, but that would require Trump also. Trump would have to back him. He would have to be completely defiant to it.
He would not.
He would have to push it. I think he would, because without him, what do they have?
He could concede.
Yeah, he could concede. And if he does, and I think he will, I think he'll concede to it. And I think he'll finally go off because he'll be like, there's just no way anymore to get into this system. I mean, I've done everything I can do. They prosecute me. They take all my cash. They take my family away. They'll destroy me. He has not been a fighter.
I disagree. So possibility, yes.
Yeah.
If this were the case, Trump would have cut a deal a long time ago and said, please leave me alone and I'll go away.
Yeah.
If they offered him one. I mean, that's the thing is, did they offer him one or did they want to make an example out of him? I think they want to make an example out of him. That's what I think.
I think that the likelihood lies with establishment forces meeting with Trump and saying, if you bow out gracefully, make it look real. We'll get you a few good licks in and then throw the match. We're going to leave you and your family alone. And Trump is clearly saying no. I don't see a reality where they're like, let's destroy everything and bring ourselves to the greatest risk we've ever faced, going to war with a man this popular. The first thing any strategist is going to do is say a Pyrrhic victory is not worth it. The risk to ourselves and the damage we incur from going to war with Trump is not worth it. We need to first try and cut a deal to see if he's willing to end the fighting and give us the victory. It's why every legal battle ends in a settlement, and not literally every, because the cost of the suit is greater.
Yeah, I understand. But when I look back to the impeachment, it didn't look like there was any deals trying to be cut ever. It looked like
because Trump won't take them.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, but I think also I'm not sure that you can deal with him that way. I'm not even sure that he does dealing the same way that you and I would do dealing.
If that's the case, he doesn't concede.
Yeah, but I think he will concede. I think he will end up conceding. I think he doesn't have much choice at this point.
No,
I think come November, Biden wins. And they're going to make sure. I mean, they're not going to let Trump back in office. I'm sorry, guys. They're not going to do it.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't see how Trump supporters, regardless of what Trump does, are just going to be like, well, I guess this is our country now. I think the worst case. Let's entertain this thought. Donald Trump says, look, we tried. We really did. That's the end. I'm gone. Good luck, America. Then I think the probability is a handful of guys in sparsely populated areas just do not recognize the authority of the government. We see people stop paying taxes, smaller and smaller pockets, but the federal government only has about, I believe it's 100,000 federal law enforcement authorities active in the United States that cannot police 160 million people, which it wouldn't. Let's say half, and let's say 10, let's say 1 million people just completely lose confidence and then just decide what's the point. Not any intentional act, not a mass protest. They just literally say, this letter means nothing to me.
Yeah.
So confidence is everything. And the way I've described it is...
But where's the will? Like, where's the will? After the six, for instance...
No. But let me make my point. It's not about will. Will does not factor into this equation. If a clown showed up to your doorstep, banging on the door, you'd say, go away.
Sure.
And what if he said, I have a clown warrant, open your door? You'd be like, get off my property or else. I am from the clown authority, duly elected, and you will be put in clown jail. You'd be like, what is going on? Understanding how absurd that scenario sounds is what happens in middle America after Biden wins a second time, where the entirety of the independent media apparatus is saying the legislative bodies have called Trump the winner, regardless of whether Trump concedes. And then you get some guy at his house and a federal authority shows up and he's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm a federal authority with a warrant. And he goes, my county doesn't recognize your warrants. My sheriff has already said, you guys can't come here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in that case, though, that would be will then. Then people would have the will. If you had a split legislative body who said, no, he's the actual winner, then yeah, I think then you can make a case for maybe people having the willpower to have some sort of resistance to this.
I think this still looks at like a simplified view of how these things typically happen. In California, in Illinois, in New York, roving bands of marauders are destroying department stores. These are people who already don't care about the authority of the police. It's not a question of willpower. They're not saying like, guys, we need to stand up and defy the police, because no, they're just like, those cops can't do anything to us. And they're doing whatever they want. When that mentality reaches average Americans in sparsely populated areas, not because they stand up and say, from my cold dead hands, but because they're like, man, the government really can't do anything, can they? My homes are being looted. Illegal immigrants are murdering my neighbors. These people aren't even the authority here anymore. So let's say it starts with this. In Eastern Maryland, you had a woman killed by an illegal immigrant. And I think just in Ranson, West Virginia, not too far from here. We're in West Virginia. That was an illegal. Is that what it was, Kellen? Illegal immigrant killed some woman in Ranson or something like that?
Yeah, it was. Right on the border of Ranson, Charlestown, Harpers Ferry, that area.
Illegal immigrants who were brought in under Biden's policies are committing crimes all across the board. What I see as a potentiality is, with the political instability, you get 5 guys sitting at a bar drinking and being like, one guy's crying his eyes out, screaming and punching the wall because his wife was just murdered by an illegal immigrant. And the other guys go, we got to do something about this. And they say, guys, take our numbers down. We're making a group chat. Anybody you see causing any trouble, we're going to deal with it because there's no law enforcement anymore. Then what happens? Neighborhood Watch. That's it. Neighborhood Watch. Neighborhood Watch shows up. They're going around. Illegal immigrant once again, because we've been seeing it across the country, or roving gang smashing into a department store, and a couple of guys who said, we need to protect our neighborhood, show up with guns, and they say, on the ground now, they scream, a shootout happens. Federal government says, we have nothing to do with this and we won't be involved. Why do I think that'll happen? It already does. In places like Chicago, for a long time now, already the feds do not intervene when these mass shootings happen. The media doesn't report on it. When that stuff spreads because of the mass illegal immigration, which is already resulting in people getting shot and killed, you're going to have locals with guns Just like look at the guy in Arizona, the rancher.
Yeah, but why would they loot where there's locals with guns?
Why are they looting where there's locals with guns? They are.
Where are they looting these places where there's locals with guns?
Chicago?
Chicago is not. That's not a gun-friendly place at all. The gangs have the guns,
and
not the citizens.
Wrong. So in Chicago,
Illinois is one of the most. That's one of the most gun-unfriendly places in the United States.
Yes. And so who has the guns?
The criminals.
And why are they criminals?
Because
they have guns.
Well, because
there are too many stories.
People aren't
Chicago.
allowed to defend themselves against.
And so what they do is they illegally acquire the guns because they're scared of the gun violence, and they become criminals. So a lot of the stories out of Chicago, it's not gangs. That's just something the media says because they want to dismiss the gun violence. It is honor shootings and local disputes, particularly over women, and the view people have of each other. Meaning a guy says, you disrespected me, and they get into a gunfight. Then you end up with a lot of stories where a father, typically a black guy, goes to Indiana and buys a gun because he's like, they're shooting up my neighborhood.
Sure.
Then the police of Chicago come in and beat the crap out of him and arrest him for having an illegal gun, and his only crime was having a gun.
Yeah, but
that's
what I'm saying is I don't
is.
see inside of like areas where there's actual gun ownership, where it's not criminalized the same way it is in
West
Illinois.
Virginia just saw in Charlestown a woman murdered by an illegal immigrant.
Yeah, but that's not a mob breaking into a store.
No, but it is a component of lawlessness. The federal government will not enforce our borders.
Yeah.
And now criminals, rapists, and murderers, and some I think are good people.
Sure.
But the bad people are coming across the border with no enforcement. And the people of West Virginia are strapped to the teeth.
Yeah, but this happens constantly. And I haven't seen a great shift of political will in this.
There's no political will required.
Inside of major metropolitan areas where they won't allow citizens to have guns and they tell the police to stand down and you could go break in the stores, the people there put up with this shit. I don't know why they put up with this shit.
And this is what you're missing. When that mentality reaches West Virginia is when social order at the federal level breaks down. When the people of West Virginia who are armed to the teeth begin experiencing people looting and illegal immigrants killing people is when illegal immigrants will start getting shot.
I think the big hole here in your argument is that I don't think that they're going to move into places where there's heavily armed store owners and try to loot them because they will get shot.
Why did the illegal
When I
immigrant
look at
come to
Black
ransom
Lives
and kill
Matter, when
somebody?
Black Lives Matter started to go out to rural districts, they were opposed by people with guns and they left. They got out of there. They beat feet because they were like,
happened-
wait a second.
Andrew,
wait a second.
What you're missing is, I am saying, if X, then Y, and you are saying, but before that happened, that didn't happen. What I am saying is, illegal immigrants we now have a story in West Virginia, which is the second most Trump supporting state in the country.
Sure.
Just passed constitutional carry, loves its guns, had an illegal immigrant murder someone at a time of heightened alert around the problems we're seeing of homelessness, of
happens
crime
every day.
in various cities.
Yeah.
But it's escalating. So what I said is, if those problems come to West Virginia, you will begin to see people say federal authority is gone.
Sure. I would agree if you had like some type of a situation where you had illegal immigrants busting into stores, or what you see in Chicago with when they go in and they loot the entire place, right? And then they run out with all the gear and you can't do anything. You're hamstrung.
Let me ask you this.
If I started to see that, sure, but I don't think you ever would, because they will literally mow them down, and there's not a damn
Who will
thing.
mow them down?
The shop owners.
So So there's a couple stories in the news.
And citizens, just people in the store will be like, "No, motherfucker, bam." That's what they'll do.
I completely agree.
Yeah, that's what they'll do.
And then what does the federal government intervene?
No, I don't think they would need to.
Right. Okay. So
I think it would just be a one-off. You'd never do it again.
And I'll say one more thing. So it is your opinion then, with the couple big stories we have in the news right now of the illegal immigrants recently coming over raping children. There was one about a 12-year-old girl who was kidnapped, a 14-year-old girl was raped, a 13-year-old was raped. You think that the men in those and aren't those conservative areas? I think it was like Missouri and like Tennessee or whatever.
This happens in Texas constantly. It happens in Southern California constantly. It's been happening forever.
And as this escalates, you believe that the men in those areas will just go, guess our daughters are getting raped, and do nothing?
Yeah.
Well, then there you go.
That's what I think. Not only is that what I think, but I think a catalyst event like what you're talking about, of kind of like, we're going to go enforce it ourselves. We're going to go enforce it ourselves with guns and this type of thing.
Already happened.
They don't really even have access to them. Like California, the areas in California where that kind of stuff is prevalent, you can't get your hands on guns, and if you can, it's highly regulated. And the penalties against you for driving around and doing anything with it are extremely severe.
This is what I don't understand. Like, what I'm describing is in essence, hey, if this thing that's already happening gets worse, right? Like, we already have had instances where the far left has taken over cities with weapons and pointed them at drivers.
They're cities.
And is it there in that they control it with guns, but people are fleeing these cities who don't have those political views?
But nobody's going to the cities they're fleeing to. In other words, conservative strongholds, right, that are armed to the teeth, there's no marauders anywhere because they get blown away. Leftist cities go, okay, we're just going to take our cops out and you guys can do whatever the hell you want. Yeah, it's their cities. They can do that, right? But in conservative America, you don't see those problems.
I'm confused because in conservative America, we are seeing illegal immigrants killing, raping.
Yeah, but you've always seen illegal immigrants killing and raping. And
now it's like profoundly worse considering the mass waves that we've seen. And now people are shocked that in like Harford County, which is Eastern Maryland, which that's liberal as it comes. But in Western Maryland, you had this, and in West Virginia, you've had it. Certainly,
I don't think an increase in immigrant attacks is going to be enough of a catalyst for what you're talking about.
Let me just give a kind of big picture here, because I feel like you guys are kind of going in circles and things like that. And Tim is speculating about a breakdown, and we don't know the future, et cetera. But I think his broader point is that we are headed towards some sort of social breakdown, which is in many ways unpredictable. But I would add that, and I agree with that, and I think it's very plausible. The other thing is that this is going to function through the election. So it's not just like the cops start enforcing laws and people take care of their own and there's a street war, things like that. That kind of thing can happen. It has happened before. It's that it's going to kind of symbolically happen through the election. There is going to be regardless of what happens in 2024, the other side will not accept it.
I think a strong
I
possibility.
agree with.
Yeah.
But I think that already happened. But that happened already. Neither side accepted. I don't think either side
it was a shit show, and it's gotten worse. So we're going to head to a point where there is going to be a consequence. No one is going to kind of calm down at any point.
Yeah, I think that there'll be social upheavals, but I don't think whatever the social upheavals will be are going to look like that. That's all I'm saying. I don't think they're going to look like that.
What is that? What does that refer to?
I don't think it's going to look like, conservative Americans beginning to get together and take the law into their own hands while the feds don't intervene. I think that that's a little far-fetched.
So it happened with the Bundy Ranch.
Yeah, and the Bundy Ranch,
that was against feds, so it's not like they didn't intervene. It was a direct conflict.
They did intervene, and that's happened before. It happened at Ruby Ridge.
But to clarify, it's not an intervention. It was a direct conflict between the feds and
Yeah, it was a direct conflict, but that's happened before many times too. There have been many times where single American families
now considering the
question comes to a head, no one predicted, very few elite commentators predicted the end of the Soviet Union, like including Henry Kissinger and so on. Mm-hmm. At some point, it does actually break down, and people are starving in cities and eating cat food. It can happen.
Here's a quick question. Sorry to interrupt, but here's a quick question. Do you think that during the 2020 election, weird things happened at polling locations?
Yes.
Do you think that most Trump supporters know this?
Yes.
Do you think that a tiny fraction of Trump supporters, let's call it 50, in various swing states might show up with guns at various polling locations where they're legally allowed to be armed at a certain distance?
I think that they've done it. But
I'm talking like 2 a.m. at like the what was it? There was I forgot the name of the place. A van pulls up at 4 a.m. carrying a bunch of boxes,
and then suddenly the ballots get counted up for Biden.
and you think this time around you're not going to there won't be any kind of conservatives standing around watching this stuff happening?
Well, I think that they'll observe it a lot closer. Yes, I do. But the thing is when you're talking about political violence, okay, like the scale that you're talking about, usually that requires.
What scale is that?
What's that?
What scale is that?
If you're talking about actual armed conflict between groups,
so like
that's happening in the
three
streets
guys
with no law
in Charlestown, West
intervention.
Virginia, who take guns because an illegal immigrant killed somebody is large-scale political violence.
I think that you said it's going to be what you said is this would be a snowball effect. So it starts with these three guys, and then it becomes worse and worse.
In like 10,
because
20
otherwise,
years,
if it's just three guys and they go out and do some shit, what is that, right? It
Which
would
is
have
my
to.
point.
It would have to scale it up.
This is the issue I take. Every single time I bring up that these things have already begun, the people who refuse and reject these ideas, in their mind, imagine like General Smith of Texas meeting with General Walter.
That's not what I'm
Oklahoma.
envisioning, though.
I'm not talking about large-scale militia or violence. I'm talking about what happens when small pockets of people recognize or believe, I believe to recognize, that the federal government is no longer enforcing the law. They form neighborhood watch groups.
That's true.
And then what happens when, over the course of a couple of years, these things expand and escalate? You get more and more stories of shootings and chaos and conflict and lootings or otherwise. This is the degradation and the collapse of a civilization. Sometimes it comes to a head, as Richard was saying, when the fear, the anger, and the sentiment have been bubbling up for a long time. And, I was talking to, why am I blanking on his name? The Blackwater, Eric Prince. And I asked him, does he see similarities to what's going on now with what happened in other countries that he's worked in? And he said, the only thing I can tell you, or the one thing I can tell you, is that every guy I've worked with says it happens instantly overnight.
Yeah.
You go to bed, everything's normal. You wake up, there's no electricity and there's no internet. Mm-hmm. And the problem that I think everybody has is they're living...
Talking about the normalcy bias.
And optimism bias.
Yeah, gradually and then all at once from the sun also rises. That's how you go bankrupt. It just happens.
In 2018, The Atlantic ran an article where they interviewed, I think it was 2018, might have been 17, where they interviewed a dozen or so national security experts and asked them about the prospect of a civil war in the United States in the next 10 years. And the estimates were at the low end 30% to the high end 90%. But they all agreed substantial likelihood was coming based on what they've seen. We had that woman from the CIA, I forget her name. She said that this is what she did. She analyzed countries about to assess their political stability for the CIA and the U.S. government, and she sees all the hallmarks happening here and has determined the United States is in the period known as civil strife, which is Bleeding Kansas was a civil strife. It led to the Civil War. Mm-hmm. Nobody thought the Civil War was going to happen, even when the Civil War already started. Fort Sumter Civil War started. Battle at Manassas, they still didn't think they were in a civil war. So with all of these factors, 2018, I say, wow, you get a professor from Princeton saying we are in the cold civil war. It is political, it is legal, it is technological, it has not gone hot.
So that I agree with. I agree that there's a Cold War going on.
And then, at that time, people say, Tim Pool is crazy for entertaining these articles. And we had someone on the show, and before, this is like, 2020, I said, I think we're on this track, and if things don't change, we could be headed towards a civil war. And so Ryan Long, we'll shout him out because he's a friend, I'm a big fan, but this is really funny because then...
the comedian Ryan?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So we talk about these stories. We talk about the conflict. We talk about the Summer of Love riots. We talk about people on the far left seized sections of their cities for months and murdered people. They took over a police department with rifles, started doing ID checkpoints. And I'm like,
they burned a police station down on live TV.
Absolutely. More than one. And I said, this is civil strife. Mm-hmm. And unless something happens to contain the violence, civil strife becomes civil war. And the funny thing that happened was a year later or so, Ryan came on the show, and I feel like it was kind of an ambush. No disrespect, because I like Ryan, but we're talking pre-show, everything's fun. As soon as the show starts, he abruptly goes, "Where's the Civil War, Tim? You told me there was going to be a civil war," and I left kind of feeling worried, but everything seems to be fine. And I said, on January 6th, 1,000 Trump supporters stormed into the Capitol to disrupt the Electoral College vote count. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't understand your question. Are you saying that we have not seen a dramatic escalation of political violence in this country? Is the assumption that civil war needs to happen the day after someone questions whether we're on that track? Since 2018, if you went back to 2018, when I first cited, or it might have been 17, I don't know, it's been a long time, that article where they referenced those national security experts, if you went back then, and I made a video where I said, in the next 6 years, they will file 90 criminal charges against Donald Trump. They will threaten him with prison. They will have arrested his CFO. They will have arrested 4 of his lawyers. In multiple states, they'll be going after him. They will be trying to stop him in every possible way. Steve Bannon will be in prison. Peter Navarro will be in prison. They'd be like, slow your horses down, you nut job. That's not going to happen. And I know because it did happen to me. When I was in these group chats with tons of DC conservatives, and I said, you don't understand the potentiality for these things escalating may be 10%, But if you're not calculating as to what it would mean if that happens, you're ignoring the problem. And the response I got from all of these Trump supporters and all of these lawyers was the federal government would never allow this level of destabilization. They're not going to criminally charge people. It's never happened. It'll never be done. No one's going to prison. No one's taking over city streets. That's within 2 years. Antifa on the far left with rifles took over numerous cities. You had Atlanta, you had Minneapolis, you had Seattle, you had Portland.
They're cities, though.
In 2020. So within 2 years of me saying escalation of political violence is a real possibility, it got to that point. And why did I think that? I mean, we had numerous instances of political violence.
Yeah, I mean, they had CHOP. They took over whole sections.
Unprecedented.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. But it's
and where are we
their
today?
Shit. They're ruining.
Meaningless.
They burned down their police station. They have riots in their cities. The spillover to conservative America. That's where I would think I would start to see what you're considering political upheaval.
I view this as the plugging the ears and going la 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 la, never happened, won't happen, can't happen, despite the fact it has literally all happened over the past 7 years. All of it.
Well, I don't think it has. I don't think there is I don't think unless you have a population that's actually hungry and is unentertained that you're going to see real actionable civil war. What I think instead is happening is you're pointing to leftists who use Black Lives Matter as a kind of a propaganda tool, told their own police to stand down and let them burn their own cities.
It's a great point, though, because it's exactly like you're making a great point. Like in 1861, when the people of Atlanta in the heart of the Confederacy came out and said, we're gonna fight ourselves and our own neighbors because we're mad at each other. No, in the American Civil War and in the Spanish Civil War and in Russia, it's rural, it's conservative, it's rural, and it's urban. People in Atlanta did not walk out of their houses and go, ooh, I'm just angry at my neighbors. No, they walked outside and said, we all agree with each other. What they're doing over there is crazy.
Right.
People in the North came out and said, what they're doing down there is crazy. For you to say, but those are their cities, that's not going to spill over. Well, of course it is. But it's a staunch bifurcation of this country, and you are living under the orders of them. When they allow Antifa to take over, when they allow Antifa, when they get George Soros DAs, when they get in state government, and when they use the legal authority of New York State to imprison your popular frontrunner president, it doesn't matter if it's in their cities. They have taken over. They are willing to use violence. They've killed people, and they will exercise state-level authority at a national level to steal power from you in your conservative town. I do not see a reality.
Well, I don't. Here's what I think ultimately, right? Because we obviously vehemently disagree on this. I think what will happen is come November, Biden's probably going to win. They're probably not going to ever let Trump in office. And I think you're not going to see anybody do shit about nothing. Because I watched as Black Lives Matter went through after they locked everybody in their home, right? They locked everybody in their home. They shut down the entirety of the United States. People were enraged about it. They were told to wear face masks while these guys were walking around burning down cities.
I got to pause you.
Nobody did shit, Tim. They didn't do nothing.
I got to pause you right there. Once again, I think you are misunderstanding. Atlanta did not come out in 1861 and burn their own city down or fight amongst themselves.
Okay.
They said at a political level, we detach from you. Now, I don't believe that civil wars follow the suit of the United States because this was sovereign states in a union, which is very different from, say, Spain. When you had cities and rural areas fighting each other, rural people tend to win because they know how to survive. What I am saying is, people in red states will reject the authority of California when California, through illegal immigration, bolsters their congressional seats and electoral college vote count. And then they say, you in West Virginia can't have guns. And the people in West Virginia say, like how we can't. And the reason why I think this, it's already happened. Western Maryland declared itself 3 counties, 2A sanctuaries against their own state and the federal government.
Yeah.
Numerous states have declared themselves illegal immigration sanctuaries. Illegal immigrants are bolstering congressional seats through the census and the electoral college vote count.
When you're talking about the cities, though, that have had sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants, that's been liberal states for a long time.
The question is, will West Virginia and Wyoming bend the knee to California, who is clearly breaking the law and violating the Constitution to enforce California's laws on West Virginia? I believe the answer is, at some point, no. And if we don't get a clear answer as to who the president is, it accelerates that to a great degree.
That's true. I mean, if it became draconian enough where the electoral power of California was such that it could impose its will on these neighboring states, and to such a degree that they could say you can't own guns, no. California can't tell other states they can't own guns.
Yes, they can.
How?
California has, what's their total electoral count? 36, 37?
Yeah, that's not telling them that they can't own guns. That just means that they have more of a population to vote for a president.
Which political party votes
congressional district?
Yeah, but
and
still,
electoral vote counts.
But again,
made. I mean,
yeah, I get it. I get that at the federal level, they would have to follow some type of federal mandate like all the states. But California unilaterally can't tell them what they can or can't do right this second.
So the issue is California, Washington, Illinois, New York. Mm-hmm. The reason why they uphold illegal immigration is because it bolsters their congressional seats and their electoral college vote count.
Yeah.
That means they have a captured census base that can't vote them out and gives them extra seats so they can influence how West Virginians live. At a certain point, people in West Virginia say no. What's my proof? Texas already did. When the Supreme Court and the federal government told Texas to stand down and let the federal government back onto the Rio Grande, Texas said no.
Yeah.
So we are watching it happen.
But they were doing that with weed. They did that with weed for how long?
There's a big difference between not enforcing laws of the federal government at the state level, like the DEA, or cooperating. And that's what California and New York does with ICE. They say, we just don't cooperate. It's a bit different when you set up razor wire barriers and with armed troops say, get the off of our river.
Yeah, the thing is that was neat to see Texas finally do something about their own border and ignore kind of some federal mandates that were going on. But ultimately, again, I got to disagree with you. Here's what I'll put this on record now because it's not that far away. And we can look back on this broadcast later. Come November, chances are good. Trump gets in. Not Trump, Biden gets in. And Trump supporters don't really do anything. He concedes. And that's probably how it's going to go.
Again, I think you live in a movie. I think you think doing something is a guy standing up and saying, I hereby declare, instead of 7 guys going out and being like, hey, can we make sure that any of those trucks coming in don't have the illegals? Because we've had a couple trucks come through here that did, and they've been transporting them. Now, I tried calling ICE, but they won't answer. So Jim and I are going to go out.
Don't consider that a civil war. That would be low-scale vigilanteism.
So, right. And what precipitates civil war?
It would have to be some large segment of the population, that 5% or higher, who are doing some type of sedition or considerable treason, what would be considered considerable treason to the United States government. That is what I would consider to be some type of actionable civil warfare.
Just 5%?
Yeah, 10%.
What is it? 60%? 60%? No, it's like 70% of the Republicans think that the Democrats have already committed sedition.
Yeah, I'm sure that they do.
Right,
but
so
they're not acting in a way as though they have.
I think
that's the problem, right? If you think that somebody has truly acted in a way as to be a traitor, right? What do you do to traitors?
Sedition and treason are two different things.
Yeah, I know. But if you were to say that you think a person's acting in such a way that they're a traitor, what do you do to traitors? Last I checked, they get hung, right?
But treason and sedition are not the same thing.
Yeah, I know. But the point of my hypothetical is to say they're not acting in such a way as though these people, while they say you're seditious or they say you're treasonous, whichever one, they're not acting as though they are. They might say it, but they're not acting like it.
What does that mean they're not acting like
it? Well, if somebody is guilty of sedition, that's firing squad. If they're guilty of treason, they get hung.
Sedition is not.
They don't get worked with.
Sedition is like maximum 10 years in prison, I believe.
Okay, fine. Well, they're not getting 10 years in prison either. But
well, that's the question of whether Donald Trump gets elected. The issue is conservatives overwhelmingly they're not revolutionaries. The question is, do we expect, with everything that's already happened, we're at the point now where since the beginning of this conversation with Donald Trump, they've accused the president of being a traitor. They've accused Donald Trump of being a traitor.
That's true.
They have acted as though he is a traitor. They cemented his feet so that he couldn't run his administration. They effectively levied legal war against him during his entire administration.
But you need a percentage of the American public who's acting in accordance with that against the system.
No.
In a physical way.
Wrong.
I don't think that's wrong.
Read a book.
I mean, just saying.
Every single instance
just saying,
of social...
5 guys are running around with guns in some small scale incursion. That's not fucking civil war.
Didn't say it was civil war.
Well, that's what we're talking about is civil unrest and civil war.
And what precipitates that is social breakdown when people lose confidence in their government.
I agree. That's what precipitates it. That's true. You have social breakdown. You have social cohesion breaking down.
You're sitting here going...
But that doesn't mean that that's what it is. And you can also, you know what else you can get? Instead of civil war, you can get... Instead of revolution, instead of civil war, you can have a renaissance too. Sometimes social breakdowns lead to renaissance. You forget about that as well.
Well, usually you get a revolution or you get a civil war. Civil wars will end with one power structure typically takes over. The outright destruction is rare. Someone always asserts authority. But you get a revolution when no one fights, or you get a civil war when someone decides to fight back. What we could experience is a communist revolution in the United States.
You could.
If the right does nothing, based on everything we've already seen, the rhyming of history is already happening. Civil strife is now. The fascinating, I'll do this because we've gone way over. But I'll just give one final point. I'll give you the last word.
Okay.
It is accepted in every major political circle. I don't mean universally by everyone. I mean progressives believe it. Conservative academics believe it. Foreign academics believe it. The United States fits the entire criteria of civil strife, the precursor to civil war. Canada released a report where they said, while improbable, we should prepare for the event because it would be highly catastrophic. Mm-hmm. In the UK, the Financial Times published an article saying, should we begin as investors considering what a civil war in the United States will do to our portfolios? Numerous high-level nation states are being advised on what will happen in the event of a U.S. civil war and why they should prepare in some way. Not that they are. Academics across the board, as I already mentioned, believe we are in this period. We are facing an election where we already know from 2020 no one will agree on the results. To then say, after this election, everything will be fine, I believe is absurdity.
Okay, so
I agree.
So
I can't believe I'm
hang
saying
on.
this.
So I'll say this. I'll say this. No, I still have to disagree. This has been going on for years and years, where the American government has prepared for contingencies for civil war. This has been going on forever. And to be honest with you, Tim, you've been talking about the Civil War since long before I even got into online politics. I was listening to you talk about, hey, this is right around the corner. It's coming soon to a theater near you. The stage is set. We're very close to it. And we weren't really that close to it. So the thing is like,
do you think January 6th wasn't a dramatic escalation of political violence?
I think that you could have a lead up over many years. Over many years.
So I was correct. What did the SPLC accuse me of?
What do you mean? When did you
September,
predict Jan 6?
In September. Oh, I love this because it's in the lawsuits against me too. SPLC's written about it because in like September of or it might have been August of 2020, I said, if Donald Trump loses, you're going to see dudes showing up in D.C. They're going to lose their mind and storm the White House or something because they are not going to accept this. You're right. It wasn't the White House. It was the Capitol building. Mm-hmm. And then they wrote, Tim Pool had foreknowledge of January 6th, and here's proof because he predicted. No, it's because I read. And I said, wow, based on everything these people are saying and preparing for, they're going to go to D.C. and do something like this. And then they did.
Yeah, but I think if you say that the sky is falling enough times, just like Alex Jones, eventually a couple of those things are correct.
In 2018, when I said escalation of political violence is going to reach a massive tipping point, and then in 2020, they firebombed St. John's Church and the White House grounds, and they took over numerous cities, I predicted that. So to say, you've been saying for a long time it's around the corner, and every time you say something's going to happen, it does, but you're still wrong. Dude, I don't care if I'm wrong.
It's not every time you say it that it doesn't happen. What I'm saying is that you've made the prediction so many times. I've heard it so many times on your show. Are we this close? We're this close to civil war. It's right around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. And the real question is, what will happen when the Civil War gets here? I haven't seen the Civil War, Tim. I'm going to be honest with you, and it doesn't look to me like the political will is there to do it. Now, January 6th people went quietly into the night, and nobody's really saying much about that either.
So the first thing I'll say academically is I don't know if you've ever actually read history books. Perhaps
a guy like me read? Yes, I've read history books. And
so when you read articles specifically about various historical periods, you realize that we condense it in our history books. And so when we talk about the rise of Hitler, people tend to forget that it's like 20 years through Weimar Germany leading up to this point where this guy rises to power. And so
the conditions were set for the Weimar Republic. We had massive inflation.
I think you're either being purposefully obtuse or you cannot comprehend basic facts. And the intentional being intentionally obtuse is to say, I recognize that many different academics have predicted civil war, state that we're in civil strife. You said political violence is going to escalate. The Summer of Love did happen. You said in 2020 that a bunch of angry Trump supporters are going to go to D.C. and storm, the White House. It wasn't the White House, it was the Capitol building. You got that one right. And you've been warning about how these things lead to each other. And now today, as of today, because the Civil War didn't kick off at any of those time periods, you've been wrong to predict these things are escalating. The first thing is, When I say, hey, look, here's a guy who said this thing is happening, that's not me predicting it. That's saying a Princeton professor has made this prediction. A former CIA official has made this prediction. Numerous security advisors have made this prediction. Canada is saying it's improbable. So it's not necessarily a prediction, but they're concerned about its potentiality. Investors are now making this prediction. We are in civil strife. I'm not making that up, nor am I predicting it. I'm saying that's an assessment of leaders in politics, infrastructure,
of some
and culture.
leaders, of some people, not of every. There's no united academia saying this is right around the corner, guys. That's not happening. You pull the sources that you want because they help craft your narrative, Tim.
And then when the Summer of Love happens, I was wrong.
Okay, so again, if you say the sky is falling every single day, eventually you get some keys of it right. But I've been hearing this from you for a long, long, long time.
What have you heard from
here? Again, I'll repeat it. I have listened to you long before I was ever inside of any type of political commentary. I was listening to you talk about coming civil wars, how this is happening.
What was wrong
in the next few months?
What was
in the
wrong?
next few months, this could really set the stage between the states and this
What was
for
wrong?
a new civil war.
What was wrong? What was wrong?
They just didn't happen.
What didn't happen?
None of these civil wars that you.
What civil
were
wars did I
constantly
predict that didn't happen? What civil wars?
Well, I didn't come in with a list of all the times Tim Pool's predicted civil war, but dude,
okay, you're at the point where
famous for it.
You're at the point where you've lost the argument and you're making things up.
What part of the argument did I lose?
You said that I predicted a civil war would happen at a period.
No, I'm saying that you talk about it constantly.
Right.
And I have not.
What was I wrong
I
about?
haven't seen any of the evidence of this.
Summer of Love is not evidence.
No, it's not. There's no civil war, even from the Summer of Love. That's not a civil war.
When did I predict that the Summer of Love would lead to a June 21st civil war in the United States?
I mean, that's what we're talking about right now, though, is the leading. So when is this? So let's be hyper specific then. What area, what decade, next 5 years, next 4 years, next 3 years, do you think we'll see a civil war? Or is it something you're talking about that's 30 or 40 or 50 years down the road? Or do you just not know?
Literally, I've said, I don't know.
You don't know.
And so you made up that I predicted a civil war at a specific period.
No, I'm saying that that's all I've heard you talk about for years.
What was I wrong about?
Again, Tim, I didn't come in prepared to debate with you. Came in prepared to debate with Richard Spencer. But I'm happy to actually come in again, and I will bring a list of everything Tim Pool has been wrong about if you want me to from
I'm
failed
wrong
predictions.
about a lot.
Yeah, okay, well, then that makes my point.
But the idea that I would recognize me saying these things might happen and being wrong about it does not mean that I'm in general wrong about the bulk of what I'm saying right now. The issue is numerous academics articles have recognized the basis of what civil strife is. I don't care if we're looking for a national committee of recognizing civil strife. Civil strife is a period described as political violence, death caused by political violence, and increasing political instability. We can then assess everything that's going on and determine whether or not we think that's true, and everyone's allowed to have their opinion. But in 2018, when I said, hey, this political violence is going to get worse, and then it did. And then I said, man, I think if Trump loses, you're going to get a ton of these people on the right going to D.C. They're going to lose their minds. They're going to be like storming the White House or whatever. And then it happened. And so those are just two big examples where I'm like, X equals Y. I hope that doesn't happen. Where we're at now is all of these things are behind us. These have all happened. And I say, if you look at history and what these things tend toward, and when you look at what has been said 6 years ago and what it has tended toward and what has already happened, things don't bode well for us in November. And you go, no, we're fine. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
That's not what I said. So I've been kind enough not to strawman you. Don't strawman me. I didn't say.
You said Biden's going to get elected.
I didn't say no. It'll be fine.
Biden's going to get elected.
Yeah.
No one's going to do anything.
That's more akin to what I'm saying. That I think that it is likely that Biden gets reelection. Okay, and that you don't see a civil war from it. Yeah, you might see some activism, might see some small-scale violence that happens. No, I don't think it's going to lead.
You've been strawmanning the whole time.
I don't think it's going to lead to anything widespread. To be honest, I don't.
You're still strawmanning because my point.
How can I strawman my position?
You're strawmanning my position.
I wasn't talking about your position.
I did not say Joe Biden getting elected starts a civil war.
Tim, I was talking about Andrew Wilson's position is not Tim Pool's. I can't strawman myself. It's my position.
You said, I don't think Joe Biden getting elected will start a civil war. That's great.
That's my position. When did I say it was yours?
But why would you make a point that I don't disagree on that has nothing to do with my position?
Because I just wanted to give you my position so that you understood my position.
Okay, so I don't know what your argument is.
My argument is that I don't believe that there's going to be widespread political violence. Even though I think Trump is going to lose, I don't think there's going to be widespread political violence. That's my point.
That's fair. That's fair enough. I feel like I want to intervene here a little bit. I haven't contributed much over the past hour. An important,
and we got to wrap up.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll be very brief. An important difference is that with the American Civil War in the 1860s, you had two different elites that were willing to fight one another. So you had a plantation elite, and then you had a federal Northeast elite. They became in conflict. Remember, Robert E. Lee, all these people, maybe Stonewall Jackson is an exception. These were kind of like the billionaires of the day. These were massive plantation-owning people who had something to fight for. I would say that currently the elites they want the system to continue. They have a lot invested in the system. You don't have that situation. Now, I think a better parallel than the 1860s would actually be the collapse of the Soviet Union, where we're headed for a legitimacy crisis. We have polarization, which I don't think was as present in the Soviet Union at that time. But there's a legitimacy crisis. It doesn't matter who wins. Biden could win. The Trump people are going to go crazy. Trump could win. The Biden people are going to go crazy. There's just this impasse where both sides are going to say no to whatever happens. Now, Tim might not be right, and it's hard to speculate about how it unfolds. I think it's unreasonable to demand that someone speculate about how it unfolds. But I think he's fundamentally correct in the sense that the likelihood of delegitimization and general social strife and breakdown is remarkably high. And to that extent, I agree with him. I think you're getting at something, even if you're you might be wrong on the details.
Well, so
here and there.
the way we've literally described it is the collapse of the Soviet Union, the rise of the oligarchs. When confidence in the central system breaks, you get and this was like a couple weeks ago, we were talking about this. Arizona has a meat processing plant that's owned by, I don't want to use any specific examples. Let's say meat plant. That's the name of the company. Mm-hmm. They've got 17 plants all across the country. Social disorder. Biden wins, confusion unfolds, and then you get, like with Texas's assertion over the river against the federal government. Let's say something like that happens pertaining to trade in some way. I don't know how it escalates. When the Soviet Union collapsed in Ukraine, guy shows up to a factory with a gun and two of his buddies, and he says, "Who's in charge?" They say, "This guy." They say, "Bring him over here." He says, Who delivers your goods? And he goes, we usually get our goods delivered from this time to this time. Okay, who do you report to? I don't know anymore because it's all broken down. They're not answering the phone. Okay, you report to me now. I'm going to make sure that all the goods your factory needs get in. I'm going to make sure that all your men get paid and you guys eat. Sound good? And they go, sounds good. And he goes, okay, I'm the boss now. You make sure everybody knows. That's how the oligarchs got their power. When things like that escalate in the United States is what I am discussing, what I'm saying right now with a unknown in the election, a federal level lawsuit, which we've already seen now escalating to its, you know what, I'll put it this way, as I always do every time I talk about it. For all I know, Joe Biden walks up to Trump, shakes his hand, they smile and they hug, they cry, and they say, we cannot let this country fall apart. It's time to team up and restore the American values, and everyone cheers, and then we're all happy with it.
Yeah, just low likelihood.
Right. Or you have Oklahoma banning abortion in every instance, and you have Colorado legalizing up to the point of birth and potentially beyond. Mm-hmm. This moral impasse cannot sustain itself next to each other. With more and more issues like that happening, we run into a Soviet Union-style collapse. Now, the problem then arises in that with the Soviet Union, you know, Ukraine, of course, is massive farmland, which is needed. Russia was very upset. Putin obviously was very upset. He wants to restore this. But the issue is the geographics of the United States are very different, especially how the states are divided. They're not built upon natural barriers in the same way in the West as they were in a lot of Europe. Mountains separating certain territories, certainly true in the United States. But for instance, what is Las Vegas? Las Vegas is a production of modernity. It cannot survive outside of national trade.
They have to import all their water.
Right.
People can't live there. Yeah. Well, what do those people do? That's an interesting question to what happens when you're going to get social breakdown. Arizona has already tried to take Great Lakes water. The only reason they can't is that the Great Lakes region has a treaty with Canada, with Ontario, because Ontario borders the Great Lakes. Due to this international treaty, it supersedes the authority that the federal government have to actually intervene on how other states can take water from the Great Lakes. Arizona doesn't have water. They need the Colorado River. Southern California does as well. If we see any kind of destabilization, even 20% of what the Soviet Union went through, you are going to have a major crisis in the Southwest when California says it's our water, but upstream they can't control it. They have no access to it. So what? Does California send a delegation to Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and Colorado to negotiate the rights after the federal government stops enforcing things? Or maybe Arizona says no? What happens if one state says, we've seen a major influx of people from Las Vegas because they have no food into our state. We need to fill up a basin so we can supply water to these people. California says that construction would disrupt SoCal. We got 13 million people. You can't do that. And they say, well, we got 10 million. What are we supposed to do? There treaties, perhaps, but we didn't see like great warring factions between the Soviets, but you did get Chechnya, you did get Georgia.
There was huge warring factions between the Soviets.
I just mean like it didn't break out into World War III. It didn't break out into like the nukes weren't firing at each other. You will get negotiations on trade, but my concern is, if confidence breaks in the federal government because people can't figure out what happened for the second time around, and if the escalation is that Trump supporters refuse to accept a Biden presidency, like we've already seen with Texas rejecting federal authority on the border, California on drugs, I think Tennessee and West Virginia and Maryland on guns, and Virginia, then if that trend continues, which I don't see why it wouldn't, I'd love to understand why it wouldn't, you end up with a Soviet-style collapse. You'll end up with warring factions. And the issue I see in the United States that I don't think would be as similar as the Soviet Union is hyperpolarization, which didn't necessarily exist. And for sure, Portland is Portland, but Eastern Oregon is very, very much not happy and has actually voted to secede from the state already. 13 counties, I believe, have voted to secede from Oregon. I don't see how those people, in the event of breaking of confidence in the federal government, just say, we resign ourselves to our fate of being ruled by far left degenerates who have taken by force the capital of our urban centers.
This kind of resides around the idea that the feds stop enforcement, or that the feds stop participating, or that the feds stop with the power dynamic of the people who are in charge of these states and don't have the power to cut off federal funding, and don't have the power of the bribe, and don't have any of these things. And I think we're a long way away from that. I just think we're a long way away.
So we will wrap up because we did go way, way over. But I guess my final point is, and again, I will give you the last word,
sure.
is I've never argued it was soon.
Yeah.
Soon is a relative term, which could be we are in the Weimar Germany period, and by 2040, with the collapse of Social Security, this is when it really breaks down. But everything we've seen so far is not indicative of peaceful goings-on.
One of the things that we regularly say around here, or at least I do, and is kind of caught on with some people, is I just don't see the off-ramp, right? So maybe it's not in the next 5 years, or maybe it's not in the next 10 years, but I don't see the solution to the problems that we have, or at least I don't see people gravitating to what seem to be the solutions. And honestly, I think the solutions are, again, stuff like we talk about, focusing on family and trying to hold that as the centerpiece of society. And I don't see anybody doing it. And anytime anyone does, they straight up get attacked by the left. Feminists are all over you. Get attacked as some kind of misogynist just for saying the family is good. Look what they did to the Kansas City kicker, just because he said that he espoused his religious beliefs, and the left was apoplectic. So it's not that it's going to happen here, now, then, or whatever. It's just, look, we see a lot of problems coming, and these
genetic dead ends. So they're all genetic dead ends.
Doesn't change the fact.
That's an off ramp.
One last thing.
I don't think so.
Because it's time to go eat.
Okay.
The first discussions of civil war in the United States was actually in the 1820s. The concern over slavery was bubbling up at that point, and numerous political compromises had been made that kept people kind of calm. And it reached a head in 1861. Bleeding Kansas, 7 years before that, for I think it's like 15 years before the Civil War, people were murdering each other over the issue of slavery. John Brown had walked up to a guy and blasted him in the face, just killed him outright for being a slave owner. That was before the Civil War had happened. And the last thing I'll say, the Battle of Fort Sumter, where only one guy died, it was only by accident, is historically recognized as the start of the American Civil War. And even though it had started, people of the United States did not believe Civil War was happening, and they went to picnic at the first Battle of Bull Run. And they watched people get their heads blown off, and it was bedlam.
Yep.
So Andrew, if you want to give your point and take the final word and then shout anything out as we wrap up.
Sure. So I will say that the United States also prepared for a contingency with a massive war to our neighbor to the north, Canada, which we were assured. I mean, they were positive that there was going to be a conflict with Canada and that they were going to have to invade Canada and that Canada was going to invade the United States. And they had massive military contingencies for this.
Still up in the air.
Politics, well, hopefully. Politics, not so easy to predict. I agree with that. Not so easy to predict. Do I see that there could be a solution, an off-ramping solution because of the birth rate crisis? I do. I think that that's a natural off-ramp. If secularists, loser degenerates can't reproduce and aren't reproducing, that bodes pretty well for the future. I'm not so sure that people with full stomachs are going to be doing massive, widespread political activism to the point where they're actually harming people in the street. I don't think we're to that point yet, and I don't think the feds are going to back off at all when it comes to federal enforcement of anything. I just don't I don't see that happening. Not even in my lifetime do I see that happening. And then further from there, shout out to The Crucible. That is my channel. It's the fastest growing debate channel on the internet, to my knowledge. I appreciate the spirited debate with you, Tim, and with you, Richard Spencer.
I think it was good. I think it was fun.
Yeah, and thanks you guys as well.
Richard, you want to final thoughts and shout something out?
Sure. Yes. I will be voting for our geriatric middle manager of a declining empire, Joe Biden, and so should you.
Fail.
I just can't bring myself to bring about what we've just been talking about. I do think it's going to be the last election. So you can find me on Twitter. That's probably the best place, or X, Richard B. Spencer. And then if you go to Substack, it's Alexandria. We actually do talk a lot about these political day-to-day issues twice a week. And then we also talk about spiritual and religious things as well that I don't think you can find anywhere else. So Alexandria on Substack. Thank you.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can catch us this summer on tour with Megadeth and Mudvayne on the Destroy All Enemies tour. You can catch our new video. It's called Let You Go. It's available on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, Amazon Music, YouTube, the internet. And don't forget, the left lane is for crime.
I love how Phil has the most normal outro and the most normal thing to say of everything we've talked about.
Well,
destroy everything.
Gotta have the normies.
Like, I'm going to go play music and we're going to live.
Because I mean, look, the politics stuff is important, but the point of all this, in my opinion, is to make America the America that we want to have, where we can actually have a society that does work together, that is not dysfunctional, that is not trying to rip itself apart. So, and to do that, I think we have to be able to put politics aside for entertainment, and that's why I don't put politics into music too often. Anyway.
All right.
Serge.
Kellen, thanks for pressing all the buttons.
No problem. Follow me on Twitter if you guys want updates about the culture war, and I guess Timcast IRL at Kellen PDL. This was a fun one. Didn't feel like 3 hours.
I know,
we went
right?
long, but it didn't feel that long.
We got to wrap it up now. It was great. I really do appreciate it, Andrew. I thought it was good. And Richard, of course,
thanks.
Conversation.